All right, here we are.
Okay, we're on, Steve.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Today is the Board of County Commissioners of Pickens County work session on Tuesday, April 7th, 2020. We are mostly working from home on a Zoom connection. Patty Clapper and John Peacock are in our meeting room at the county building. We're going to have a slight change on the printed agenda. There is a gap between 1:30 and 2 that wasn't filled, and so the 2 o'clock presentation on critical infrastructure projects will be moved up to approximately 1:30. Everything in the afternoon after that will be moved up, and we're going to roll right through each of the items. So first up, we have an interview with us. Citizen board interview, and that's with Jeff Woodruff, a neighbor of mine, and he has reapplied to be on the P&Z, which he's currently serving as the chair of that. So Jeff, welcome to our virtual meeting here.
Thank you, Steve, Patty, George, Kelly, and Greg. Appreciate your time this afternoon. You want me to give a brief intro?
Hi. So, Jeff, you were on the phone. We are all on video with each other. We can see each other's faces. So, Jeff, I'll start off the questions and comments. First of all, we really appreciate the fact that you have been serving on the Planning and Zoning Board. I think you've been the chairman, and you've been doing an exemplary job of serving on the Planning and Zoning Board. So, why do you want to continue on being on the Planning and Zoning Board? Oftentimes you work so hard and you don't get a lot of kudos for it.
Thank you. I think we're probably halfway through with what we started. I originally met most of you in the Dunaway room 2 years ago at my original meeting, and I think a lot of what we've worked on for the past 2 years is sort of halfway through the process, meaning updates to land use code, the changes in some of Brian's work, some of Ellen's work. So I feel another term is in order, and honestly, I do enjoy the work that we're doing. I think the board over the past 2 years has been extremely well engaged, both internally with staff, the relationship with staff, but also with the people, with the caucuses and each of the applicants. So I think I think we still have some work to do.
For questions from the other board members, because we will all probably ask all the questions between all of us. George.
No, thanks. George. Thanks, Jeff, for reapplying. Looking through your application, you talked about what would be most beneficial is to have some quarterly meetings with the BOCC and just to enhance the communication and get a better sense of direction. And I know that we've had some meetings in the past couple of years. Specifically, we met talking about some possible changes in the energy codes, TDRs, house sizes, and things along those lines. And I'm not sure, at least from my point of view, that those meetings were that beneficial in terms of aiding the P&Z. Perhaps I'm wrong. I just wonder if you could speak to that.
No, I put out there's a follow-up that I sent to Charlotte. I think that was one of my first drafts that's in your packet. And the answer is no. I applaud the independence that we have as P&Z. I applaud that what we're doing is looking at land use code and applying it. And when something's outmoded, we're revisiting it. So no, I don't, Greg and Kelly came to a recent meeting And, the risk is we run into a groupthink as opposed to an operating rhythm that, opportunistically we should meet. There should be, the last time P&Z and BOCC were in a group work session was in the Dunaway room. It was with Gabe Preston and with August Haas, and that was a great meeting because the message was communicated once to both parties. So no, I don't think quarterly is in order. I think opportunistically, if there's more that needs to come down from the BOCC, it would be nice to hear from you.
Okay, and so just as a quick follow-up, I know that we've been working on the energy codes, updating the building codes as it relates to energy and lowering our greenhouse gas emissions, and we've had some preliminary discussions, even during those meetings, different ideas about how to approach the TDRs and house sizes, and most recently the GMQS, which is going to come before you. So I guess my question again is it helpful for you to hear, at least from the BOCC, some of our thoughts as you then are going into discussions on your end?
Yeah, I think from my old world in the corporate sector, if a board met, there'd be a sit down afterwards. So, for example, to address your question directly, you had a board retreat. The BOCC had a board retreat, and there were a bunch of hot buttons that were then going to be addressed by staff, whether that's GMQS updates. I'm trying to think what else was pushed directly out of your offsite. It would be nice. I think just to say, look, this is the direction we've given staff. You're going to see, it's a heads up. This is what's going to come your way. And as a planning board, these are things that we would like, that we've asked staff to address, but we also, we're just giving you the courtesy that these are coming in short order. But that's,
okay, great.
I think, sorry, is that George?
Yeah, no, that's great. That's thanks. Because I'd asked that similar question to Chelsea, and again, she thought that having a little better sense in terms of where the BOCC is thinking would be helpful, at least for her.
I think, again, without presupposing an outcome, I just worry. I think part of I think there is a major value in P&Z being independent and coming to you with recommendations, and having listened to, for example, your recent meeting, which you discussed UMCO, the Upper Maroon Creek overlay and house size. It was invaluable to get your thoughts, but I think part of, again, what I would want to keep is the fresh ideas coming out of P&Z and the feedback loop that makes, when something gets to you, the recitals, the resolutions are really good, and it saves you time on, potentially on second reading. Does that make sense?
Yeah, great, thanks.
So, question from someone else here?
Steve, I'll go.
Patty?
Yeah. Jeff, again, thank you. Thank you for the time that you served and for wanting to serve again on this board. P&Z is critically important to the county and where we're going with growth management and all kinds of issues as far as growth, house size, you name it. And it's part of the input we get from planning and zoning. I agree with you on kind of the level of guidance. It's nice, I think, for P&Z to know kind of what the BOCC is thinking, but not to have that the comments and the ideas, the creativity, the diversity of opinions from planning and zoning. So I really appreciate that. And I really don't have specific questions because we've watched you in action now for a couple of years. And again, I want to thank you for your time served, and I look forward to having you serve some more time with us. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Betty. Thank you. If I haven't said it, I'm impressed with the county as well. But what I think, if I could turn Patty's statement into a question, which is, I think the staff support of P&Z is outstanding. And again, hopefully what we're giving you in terms of resolutions is really thinking through the issue and, putting a level of rigor and time into something that when it gets to you, whether it was Pitkin County Solar or I would even dare say the STICO master plan, we put a lot of time and energy into these items. And I think most of you have also seen in your packets where I personally asked for written replies from the applicant, and it's part of how we can codify what we do. There's no, and I know you've gone back to the tape a few times, but given there's no sort of a secretary of P&Z, I think part of the way, when we forward you stuff, forward you recitals, we also forward you in your packet, you'll see written responses or written questions for the applicant. We're really trying to hold people, to the recitals and the resolution.
Hey, Greg here. Jeff, once again, thank you. I know you put so much time and effort into this, and I'm impressed by the good cheer you bring to it. You're an affable chair of the board, and the question I had for you was, how's it going with the public? When you have a public attendance at the meetings, how has that been going? Do you feel as if the P&Z are hearing public comment? And I just want to get a sense of how that is working with you all.
Yeah, I think, if someone said, "What's Woodruff's legacy? What's Jeffrey's legacy?" And you had you asked Alan Richmond the same question, he would say, "I probably take too many public comments." And the example I would give would be, again, Pitkin County Solar. We probably took 60 public comments over 2 public meetings. That was in addition to our on-site visits. So, that took 6 weeks of time. So the short answer to you is no. I think we're probably as amenable as any board to be open to public comment. We do occasionally use the cell phone timer, but we've never, ever, we had a gentleman speak publics for 10 minutes the other day, unrelated to the resolution. And yes, we probably should have cut him off. But I think at the end of the day, we're here to listen. We're a citizen board. And, today is an example where I think this evening there's probably 15 plus public comments. And that includes law firms as well as planners. And we're here to listen. I think that's, and if you saw my forwarded note to the public, which was, it's a difficult time, but at the end of the day, I do like that we're conducting business as usual, if you will, and continuing with what's on the agenda. 2019, we had quite a few continuances, and largely those were in the GMQS world. So short answer, Greg, is yes. The public comment and commissioner comment, I think, we generally follow a similar format to you, which is staff, applicant, commissioner comment that's pressing for either the staff or the applicant, and then public, open to public comment.
Jeff, it occurs to me tonight you're probably going to get questions about continuing some of the issues before you, just due to the COVID response and the telecommuting. Maybe that's some other questions on that from the board as well. I would say there's 15 letters or so that have been either posted to the agenda website or, I think, Greg, you've been on a few. I think Steve and Kelly have been on a few, but those have all been circulated to all members of planning and zoning. My letter says, generally we're in the 3 to 5 minute range, but again, we've never, we've always taken public comment, even though, it's a public meeting, but not a public hearing. We've always opened up to the public. And I can't see if you're giving me a quizzical look, right?
Sorry, I'll jump in. I think Steve is trying to give me the okay. This is Kelly. Hi, Jeff. Thank you so much.
Hi. Yeah, go ahead, Kelly.
I really enjoyed attending the P&Z meeting last month and that rich conversation that we started there. I would like to ask, I sort of am starting to ask this of everybody, in addition to the ordinary attendance at the meetings and your role as chair, are there extra activities via the P&Z that you've been involved with? Either subcommittees that you've elected to attend or have been asked by the board to attend, or participation with jurisdictions on their planning efforts. I always want to make sure that everybody's sort of full scope of activity related to your role on P&Z is presented to us.
So excellent. Thank you for the question. And again, I don't know if in a one page that came across. So I did spend the better part of the last year in the room next to you with no windows and the public, which was the energy, working group. And I did that. I think, not that I was the only planning and zoning member attendant, but I did that as a private citizen. And to me, it was excellent just to hear the public feedback. And so the land use changes that are in front of you today were vetted pretty much at the top level by planners, architects, real estate folks. So when you asked for public comment, that energy working group I did sit with for the better part of a year in person. And again, I think the caliber and the response, if you will, from the public was pretty extraordinary, because everyone's bought into the land use code changes. And those are around ground mounted solar, building orientation, rooftop relative to international fire code, et cetera. And then again, as the chair, I've been invited to speak with Eagle County, and they have a new head of community development. I did that with Ellen, and then we as a board, as planning and zoning, met in BOCC with Susan Nickel Susan, why am I blanking her last name? With Susan and thank you, Susan Phelp, and with her planning and zoning team. So that was through community development. There's no, outside of that, I'm a member of the USGBC, which is the U.S. Green Building Council, and attend Green Drinks. So, but the three activities that I just discussed in some detail were really as a representative of planning and zoning, and they're with and through community development, either Ellen or Cindy or Suzanne.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, Jeff, you list three issues currently facing your board. These are all big items. One is supporting a continuum of housing solutions. Second is conservation easements, protecting rural and remote from development and subdivision planned unit development. And the third is stricter energy requirements. What is your favorite topic of those three, and how are you being proactive in dealing with that?
Am I allowed to?
You could be allowed two or three.
I think when I interviewed 2 years ago, the big question was, how are we going to solve employee housing in the Valley, which I thought was interesting. And so I look at, what's happened in the Valley over the last 2 years, and I've met many of you I've also been a framer over at Habitat and worked on Basalt Vista, Kelly. I've seen Basalt Vista go up. I've seen the Roaring Fork Apartments go up next to, on Emma Road. And then recently we were approached by Ed and Vardy, and I took an interest, personal and professional, in that sort of unmet need, if you will, for seasonal workforce housing with respect to the growing season. I've witnessed, I guess, change over the past 2 years in terms of some solutions. So yes, that's something, 2 years later, it's still an issue. We still need to resolve it. I'm concerned going forward that we're going to see more sprawl in the Valley. And I would be willing to bet if we tracked, Garfield and Eagle permits, that they probably will be doing better than Pitkin. And that's my 2 cents of what the current sort of, current world is. The second one, I guess, is greenhouse gas emissions and overall building energy use. And I think, again, everything we've done over the last 2 years is to address that. And, there's more to come. Potentially looking at becoming a HERS rater. So I'd have an understanding of, what does it mean when Greg says he wants the house on Red Mountain to be net zero. Not only, do I trust the mechanical engineer or the electrical engineer, but, personally to have that experience myself. So follow up on those 2 items.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. Well, we'll be making a decision pretty soon. I'm pretty sure we are all very happy with the job you've been doing, and we're pleased that you want to continue on working on the Planning and Zoning Board. But we do have to pass an official resolution. So in the meantime, you're still, obviously, you're still a member because your term ran out like last week, and but we will make a decision pretty soon. I'm pretty sure I know what the decision will be, that we would want you to have you keep serving. But anyhow, thanks so much for being on the board. I have to tell a little story. My dad at one time was on the Planning and Zoning Board, and the way he got on there was he was just driving down our Capitol Creek Road one day, and the commissioners were doing a site visit somewhere along the way, and he stopped and talked to them there was only 3 commissioners in those days. So he talked to them for a few minutes and then went on his way, and the next day he was notified that he had been appointed to serve on the Planning and Zoning Board, which he hadn't even applied to be on it. So that's kind of how he got involved in politics. So we have a little bit more organized system now.
It's if I could leave with one more note, I guess the belated answer to Kelly's question. I also served for 2 years on the Snowmass Capitol Creek Board. So I helped with David Chase and with Chris Collins and Jill Spella on crafting the Snowmass Capitol Creek master plan with John McBride sitting over my shoulder. So I think I'm also sort of empathetic or sympathetic to the caucuses and the role they play. And again, I think, when we read and review and we're looking at recitals and obviously our packets, it's how does this fit in relative to the caucus plan? And if I could leave you with one last thought would be, I'd love to see the same way Allen and the Upper Maroon Creek came up with land, codifying their caucus plan into land use. I'd love to see, parts of the valley like Snowmass Capital where I live, and, my neighbor Steve, would like to see the same here. So if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeff, for appearing before us today, and we appreciate your time. So we'll be talking to you soon.
Likewise. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
So moving on our agenda, we have review of future agendas, which I'm just pulling them up. They weren't in our original packet. And so, John, do you have any future agenda changes or notices?
Yeah, thank you, Steve, and we will look at what happened with the packet. It is available on the website for the public. The main thing that I want to get direction from the board on today is we had originally planned to do a large presentation of the Airport Vision Committee's recommendations and take public comment. The idea originally was to do it at a large venue like the Dorhosier Center, have the Vision Committee leadership present the recommendations of the Vision Committee, have minority reports presented, and then be able to take public comment in that venue. the idea, of course, was we could accommodate a large number of people. Of course, all of that has changed with the COVID-19 and the public health orders. In visiting with our leadership from the Vision Committee yesterday, we thought that an amended process to allow them to conclude their work may make some sense. And that would include, like we're doing right now, doing a Zoom presentation where the Vision Committee recommendations would be presented by the leadership group. There would be an opportunity for minority reports. Right now, we're aware of one minority report that would be presented, and then allow comments from Vision Committee members to the board. We would have an email set up for the public to provide comments to the board based on those presentations and recommendations. We would not set the meeting up as a decision-making meeting for the board. It's really just to receive the final work from the Vision Committee. And then we would set up a future meeting, probably in a similar format to what we had originally thought at, for example, in a venue like the Dorhosier Center, where the board can take up the official business of making decisions on the recommendations of the Vision Committee. And that would be primarily in the form of approving a revised airport layout plan and other recommendations and submitting those to the FAA. What we're really seeking is we are prepared to do the Zoom meeting, kind of the modified approach to allow the Vision Committee recommendations to be presented to the board and to the public so that they can conclude their work with the understanding that probably official action from the board, because there is significant public interest, I think, in this discussion, to be followed up when we can meet in a larger venue again. So really, our recommendation was to move forward April 16th with that modified process, but we are open to conversation and direction from the board, of course, on that.
So Steve, can I make a comment?
Yeah, go ahead, Patty.
I received a call yesterday. I don't know if any other members of the board, from Wayne Etheridge, asking us to postpone. He didn't feel the urgency. I tried to explain to him that this was just a presentation, that because of what was going on, we really wanted to have a full meeting where the public could come in, and we weren't sure when we could schedule that. So he didn't appreciate the fact that we were going to move forward with it, but I said that I would check to see, are there any, by taking our time now because of the pandemic and because this is such a vast issue with a lot of community concern, do we have any issues with deadlines with FAA, with that we might need to be reaching out to the federal government and saying, because of the pandemic, it's going to take us a little longer in the process?
Yeah, I think everyone's kind of in that position right now on all business that's being done, Patty. I think this was an opportunity. I think, there was fairly significant consensus among the Vision Committee members, and I think there is a desire to conclude that process and to present the outcomes of what was over a year of work for a large number of citizens. And it's really presenting the findings. It's not about changes at this point. They voted on those recommendations. It's more about what is our process now to hand those over to the board. I think this revised process is an agreement that the board should probably wait to take any formal actions until we can figure out a way for the broader public to participate and give comment
Well,
on
yeah,
those
and I'm agreeing
recommendations.
with that. I'm just asking is by waiting, we don't know a date certain. Are there
Correct.
any issues we may be coming into conflict with federal
Yes,
deadlines?
we're running up against potential grant deadlines and such, and we have not gotten any indication that those are going to be extended. But this is a
Is that
different
something
world.
we may want to, get a heads up on and look into sooner than later by reaching out to the federal entities and saying, this is our process, we're moving it forward, but because of the pandemic, we aren't sure what our actual time frame is going to be, so we're requesting now
Yeah.
the opportunity to extend.
We have done that.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page on that. And I will get back to Mr. Etheridge and let him know, because I told him I would after today's conversation. Thank you. Thanks, Steve.
Kelly,
Thanks.
and then George.
Okay. Can you guys hear me? I don't think I'm on mute. Okay. I just have 3 questions. So I'd like to understand a little more what those deadlines are. If we're looking at an end of quarter deadline, or if we're looking at an end of year deadline. Also, what would the function of the email serve in this type of meeting? And then if on the 16th, and then finally, would a future meeting that would allow for public comment recreate everything we would do on the 16th? And the reason I ask that is because I know we've had, in regard to other topics, some internal concerns with our board process about doing all of our discussion in a work session and then going to the regular meetings and moving quickly without the same level of deliberation. And I don't want to do that in this case. So I'll just throw my bias out there along with those 3 questions.
So the first question, I think there was hope. Oh, sorry, mute button. Thank you.
You're on mute. Okay.
Mike Jones.
Got it. So to the first question, the original timeline was to have decisions by the end of the first quarter. So we're already past that. And yeah, we've moved past that largely, one, because we took some extra time for the vision committee to have the discussions they needed to have, and then obviously this would be pushing it farther because I think we had originally intended to have the presentation followed rather quickly with a board kind of meeting, regular meeting to take action, and there will be more of a gap now between those. So I guess the answer to your first question is we're already running late, Kelly, on that from at least our federal partners' perspective. As to the second question, the purpose of the email wasn't necessarily to play a role in the meeting. It was to provide an avenue for people as they, because some people may be seeing the presentation or the vision committee recommendations for the first time during the presentation. And so it really was an avenue for us to collect public comments and share those with you as board members are reviewing the report of the vision committee, as well as the work that the other work groups have done. That there's a rather substantial amount of information that's been collected that we're going to ask the board to review. That's one of the reasons I think that there's some desire to conclude this and get this in your hands, because right now is a good time to be studying all that stuff, I think. So the emails weren't necessarily designed as a comment mechanism for the meeting, is more a mechanism for us to be able to collect comments and share them with the board after the presentation and before the board takes any formal action, so it can become part of your record. The third question, I think the idea is to, like I said, allow the original intent was not for the board to necessarily take an action right away on the 16th, that there would likely be this initial presentation, there would probably be some questions and follow-up, and that would lead to a formal action of the board during a regular meeting. It was our hope, of course, not to have too much time, I think, between the original presentation of information and follow-up and decision-making, so that the data could be kind of kept fresh, both for the board and for the public. But I mean, the other option, and that's why I wanted to talk about it, is we could delay from the 16th. It just it stretches out the work of this citizens committee, and I think the farther away you get from a decision point, maybe the staler that work becomes, and it would be good to let them conclude their recommendations, get it in the board's hands, so that you all can study it, and we would delay the formal action. And we'd probably have to do some repeat of the work, but we would have the full written record of the work that all the work groups and vision committee did as background for those meetings. I think I hit all three of your questions. Okay.
Okay, George?
Oh, thanks. So I'm in favor of moving ahead and having our what I told Wayne, Patty, was an opportunity to have for the BOCC to have a first blush of the report from the Vision Committee.
That's what I told them.
And that no decisions will be made, but it's an opportunity for us to start to understand all the issues and the concerns, because as John stated, not only the Vision Committee, but all the other committees, they dedicated a good year of their lives to this project, twice a month at least. And the Vision Committee has really gone up far above the what I think they originally thought their charge or their time frame was going to be. So I would like to have the Vision Committee present that information to us, us have the opportunity to ask any questions, and then for the Vision Committee to hand it off to us, and for us to then schedule further meetings with the public to be able to have further discussions. But I don't see the benefit of delaying this because although it could be delayed for months. And at that point, as John said, information gets old and stale, and the Vision Committee gets frustrated. So I think we've got a good process in place, and we should just move forward with it.
Steve, can I just clarify? George, that's pretty much what I said to Wayne also. I am in no way saying that we should delay. I'm just saying after this first meeting on next week, and we don't know how long it might be until we can hold a general public meeting. So I wanted to make sure that we were in the process of notifying our federal partners that, and I'm sure they would be understanding since it's also a national declared emergency. Let's hope that they would understand. So that's the direction I was going with Wayne also, was just getting it to the BOCC. And then I'm sure that at this meeting next week, we may well have other questions and information that we're requesting that we need staff turnaround time on also. So thanks, George.
No, I agree. Yeah, I agree. Thanks, Patty. And John, are we still scheduled to have that meeting starting at 4 o'clock, or?
It was 4 to 7.
We'll double check. I've got two answers in the room right now. One is 3 to 6, and the other is 4 to 7. I think we had been meeting at 4 to 7, right?
Lost your voice.
We added an hour.
Oh, we bumped it up to 3 to 6.
John, you're muted.
I
Oh,
did that.
I think Patty and I are muting and unmuting each other.
I'm just muting you. I'm keeping me live.
Sorry about that. No, I don't think I'm muted now. So we had been meeting 3 to 6, so we'll confirm that for you guys. Sorry about the mute.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, Greg?
Yeah, hey, thank you. I appreciate the conversation, what I've heard from everybody so far. My concerns are, regarding the crisis with the COVID-19 and the economic crisis we're in. My first observation is that I think a lot of our assumptions are changing. A lot of the ground beneath us is shifting to some extent, and we don't really know what. And so I'm going to be questioning a lot of the assumptions that are made. And I appreciate the work that the people put into the report, but I think they're going to have to recognize that the world may be different after this crisis. And also, it just coincidentally, the expected peak, as I understand it, for this region, for the COVID contagion is right on about the 16th or 17th of April. And I'm guessing that there's going to be a lot of public anxiety and stress around this. And I have to say, I'm not sure people are really going to be paying much attention or be able to focus as clearly. So the thought of having them give the report would be a relief, would give us time to study it. But when we come back around in a couple or 3 months, I can imagine we're going to have to start up again from, jumpstart this thing again and go back in and question the assumptions and have these presentations again, because it does feel like a really long time between April 16th and August or late July, or who knows when we could actually have that public meeting. And I really do think having the meetings closer together would benefit everyone. On the other hand, I want to dig into that stuff now when we have the chance, and I'm eager to see it. But I think what we're going to have to do is come back with a new set of assumptions and a new set of presentations based on what we have, but modified given the conditions. And then hopefully that'll be a couple weeks before our public meeting at a BOCC regular meeting.
Could I just, Greg reminded me of a couple of things. Could I jump in? And Greg, thank you. I think one of the other reasons that there's some desire to move the recommendations forward is that the Vision Committee has made recommendations regarding negotiations that the board and staff should pursue. I think to your point, Greg, that would involve additional information into the decision-making process and as part of, for lack of a better term, almost a decision tree that has been set up in the Vision Committee's recommendations. If the board is so inclined to give staff direction to pursue some of those negotiations so you could know what the outcome of those were prior to you making a final decision. This is a time frame that even in our new world, we could probably engage in those discussions and some of the negotiations that the Vision Committee has asked for, so that when we do come back for a final decision, I agree with you, we need to take into account anything that may have changed as a result of the pandemic that we're going through right now, as well as the results of the conversations that the Vision Committee is asking you to give staff direction on. And we can't really get that direction until you have those recommendations in front of you.
John, I think I heard most of that. It's just there was some papers shuffling, but I think I got the gist of it, that there's some important stuff that we do need to hear sooner rather than later, given the situation. I think I understand, and we agree on that.
Okay, and sorry about the papers. Oh,
That was me.
Hey, Kelly?
I'm muted again.
Yeah, I guess I think I'm more confused now than I was. Can you guys hear me? Because I just put this headset in. I'm sharing a room with my napping baby. So So on one hand, I'm hearing, I mean, I totally think it's okay to approach this like a work session. I know that our decision is going to benefit from multiple returns to this conversation, just given the volume of information. And so starting to absorb that information and generate our questions is fine and appropriate. But I'm confused because on one hand, I was hearing we're not going to make any decisions. And then on the other hand, I'm hearing we might want to weigh in on sort of specific recommendations and decide to give direction on those. And, you know, again, just given the sensitivity around this, I think that you need to have a public process if we're going to be doing any decision making and giving people the opportunity to address the things that they've heard in the course of, you know, of what we're hearing at the same time.
Yeah. And thanks, Kelly. And I'll see if I can clarify a little bit. So it is not directions or a recommendation relative to any projects that would be done at the airport. It's direction to have basically more information brought to the table about what the impacts of any projects might be. And so to better understand, for example, where the airlines might be in their decision-making process of what type of aircraft they would choose to operate into Aspen before you make any decisions. And so those are the types of, basically, it's more of a process recommendation from the Vision Committee. And that's why I think
You're on mute again, John. And Patty, can you mute your microphone because we hear your papers?
I did mute, but I muted him too, maybe.
So I just figured out what's going on. So whenever Patty mutes hers, it mutes mine. And so she's muting hers so she could move her papers around. We're figuring this all out. I don't know when I got muted. However, I think, Kelly, why I think the discussion with the Vision Committee now is important is exactly to clarify these questions, because the recommendations of the Vision Committee that I'm talking about are not decisions relative to whether you decide to move forward with any specific infrastructure projects at the airport. It's really about how you collect information about what type of, for example, aircraft the airlines might decide to operate into the airport before you make any final decisions on the infrastructure. And those are kinds of conversations we just want to be sure we've got board direction on relative to the Vision Committee recommendations. And before you make any final decisions. So any final decisions relative to any changes at the airport would be pursuant to, ongoing public process. There's no doubt about it.
And I do apologize for the muting and unmuting, but John and I seem to be connected. So I unmute and he mutes, and we're interfering with each other. So sorry about that.
I'm going to mute you soon.
John, I would also favor moving ahead on April 16th with a presentation from the Vision Committee to us. We need to keep processing county business as best as we can given the situation. And I think we're all getting pretty good at doing the video conferencing and, have kind of adjusted our lifestyles to be able to keep conducting business. And the more we can stay on track with the airport process, the more we should do that. So I'm in favor of doing the April 16th meeting. Looking at when peaks are, I see you, Greg, I'll get you in a minute. I think there are going to be lots of peaks in different communities across the country over a period of maybe the next year or two even. During the Spanish flu in supposedly 1918, it hit the interior of Alaska in April of 1920. So kind of 2 years later, it finally hit that part of the world and killed dozens of people. So this could be the same kind of thing. There might be lots of peaks, and we're going to have to work around that. hopefully the peak in Colorado will be in a week or two here, and then it will dampen down and not be such a threat. But no guarantees on that. Greg, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to say, for this April 16th presentation to us and to a very interested community, it's going to be essential that the presentation is top-notch, the graphics, the illustrations, the AV, the audio, all of this is handled at a level that we're probably achieving soon. It's hard. It's hard for people to get used to this. But I just want to say that let's make sure we are on our top game when this presentation happens, because this will be a topic of great interest throughout the community, and it would be a real shame if things don't go well technically, audio-wise, if the presentations aren't visible or you can't read them on the screen. It's just, let's make sure we really have that one teed up and we do a smashing good job on that presentation.
Okay, Kelly.
All right, thank you. What are the expectations given to the Vision Committee for their activity or presence before us as a board beyond April 16th? None.
Sorry, mute button. Yeah, right now there are none, but I think, frankly, folks spend a lot of time doing this, so I would expect, Kelly, that if there were a request from the board for further Vision Committee input in the future, folks would be willing to do that.
Okay. I would ask that request be advanced to them or as offered to them, and at a minimum, I could see us asking that the 3 chairs come back and any minority report come back before us. And I also just would like to, separate but related, think of a way that we can thank these very dedicated volunteers for their year-plus effort in helping guide us.
And of course, we had a plan for when we had everyone together, but we're going to have to rejigger that.
Can I tag on to Kelly's for a minute? Yeah, our gratitude to this group of people is immense. It's awe-inspiring what they've done for us. I think on this, perhaps the April 16th presentation is also going to have an opportunity for someone to discuss how the ground has changed, or how the atmosphere and the environment have changed going into this next round of decisions based on what we're seeing happen with the economy and the crisis response. That would be a good time, I think, to have the assumptions, the aforementioned assumptions that are made in creating a plan or a presentation like this. It'd be a good time to bring up what they think has changed, if you get me.
Yeah, Greg, the only concern I have there is I'm not sure any of us have a clear view of how this is going to play out over the next 12 or 18 months. And it may be incumbent on you as a board and your staff to kind of keep track of all of those changes going forward and, being agile. This is a long-term plan. This is a plan that's probably, more of a 40-year lookout, and the immediate circumstances will have challenges in regards to timing and decision making. But I don't know that's going to affect the overall recommendations. But we can ask the Vision Committee to address that. But I think it's more going to be, how do you all make adjustments to whatever recommendations you accept from the Vision Committee as we learn more about what economic impacts might be, travel impacts might be, and such going forward.
So we're forewarned. Thank you.
So, John, we maybe have more future agenda items to discuss. Do we want to try to do that quickly, or should we jump to our next thing since we have our guests waiting in the wings here
Yeah,
for the infrastructure projects?
Steve, Greg here. I'm going to have to go off for a minute, but I'll be back shortly.
Okay, great.
And that's all I really had to address for future agendas, and we didn't give Patty enough time to review them this time, I guess.
Well, due to the fact I wasn't able to pull it up when I copied out my packet.
You're muted.
Sorry, I muted you.
Oh, he muted me? God, I didn't have time to, I didn't have the opportunity to review this until just now. And I was telling John, I said, maybe the reason they didn't put future agendas in the packet was because we didn't really know what the future of our agendas was going to be. And I still have that feeling. So I'll wait until we kind of know. There's some changes I'd make in the out days of our meetings, but everything's up for change.
Patty, okay, George, quickly.
He cut me off.
John, a couple of things on future agendas, because I did see them. They are pretty open right now, which still is a little surprising, given that we're going into the second quarter. But my immediate question is follow up with ComDev. We started our conversation with GMQS. We had a first reading. We know there's more work that is going to need to be done, as well as the other aspects of the energy code follow-ups with TDRs and house size. And I don't see any of those as follow-ups. So I don't want to have that strung out over months and months and months, and we forget where we started as well. And you're muted.
Oh, did you unmute me? Okay. Yeah, we can talk. Obviously, George, I think everyone's schedules have kind of come into question. Any aspect right now or conversation that requires a lot of upcoming public process, I think we're still trying to figure out, just like our previous discussion. So we'll certainly talk about that with Cindy.
All right, great, thank you.
Okay, so let's move on to the critical infrastructure projects discussion. And we have
Rich, we may
Gary and
want to
Matt
put you
and
in
John
the
and David
middle.
all on the line.
Yeah. Now
Just don't
we
hit the
have
mute
3
button.
people within reach of a mute button, so let us know if you can't hear us. Rich is really going to take lead on presenting this, and Rich, you've got a presentation, right?
I do.
Okay, so we're pulling up a presentation, but I guess there is some confusion among some members of the public about what this conversation was about. And it's really relative to picking county projects as they relate to the public health order. The public health order exempts critical infrastructure and public construction projects. However, with exception of the social distancing requirements. However, in the interest of meeting the spirit and protecting public safety and public health, we've developed a tiered recommendation, tiers 1 through 4, which Rich will explain as we get his presentation up, of projects that we would both capital projects and maintenance projects that we recommend moving forward with because they are of a public safety nature. And then we have tiers 2, 3, and 4. So we're basically going to be presenting to the board public projects that we think need to move forward, public projects that we're recommending to hold on, the board has discretion to give us direction one way or the other, whether we move forward with projects right now or we do not. And so this is really staff's recommendation based on different criteria. The other assumption that we've made that's a little bit different right now, the county's public health order runs through April 30th. We've made just the assumption that it'll go longer, and so we reviewed projects and maintenance activities from the perspective of if we continued to be under public health orders through June. There is no discussion of that right now. We're just making the assumption right now as we evaluated our projects and what we'd move forward, because you have to have a certain lead time on a lot of these if you're going to do them or not. And so we're really seeking direction from the board. And with that, I see I've used up just enough time to get the
Can I jump in though? Steve, can I
presentation
jump in real quick? As far as general construction issues, we're all still hearing from the construction industry throughout the valley. We've got a letter from Bob Bowden, which I did have Charlotte forward on to the Board of Health per his request. But I also want to make sure that the board knows, and if they don't know, that Community Development, Cindy Human in particular, is working with members of the construction industry on, it's a best practices. So when we start to gear back up construction, be it maybe starting with some basic projects moving forward, we have a best practice rules and roles for general contractors. I just got a very draft copy from Sam Barney, who's been working extremely hard on this, reaching out to other contractors within the valley, finding out what they're doing, what they would recommend, what's possible, what would not be possible. So that's also in the works as we're talking about the county's own projects. Just wanted the board to be aware of that.
Yeah, and so just to be clear, right now there is not a conversation anticipated around changing the public health order, but Patty's exactly right. That next conversation is how do we unwind and how do we resume activities and under what criteria? And so we are working to think through that right now. These are painful decisions to make, and they're really painful choices to have in front of us around protecting public health during the pandemic and the really significant impacts that we're having on our local economy and jobs. And none of these decisions are taken lightly, and we're anxious to be able to resume normal activity while protecting public health in the future. So with that, Rich, can I turn it over to you? Afraid my bandana is in there.
You guys are.
Who I'm going to mute or not mute. It's been fun watching this dance between you. Commissioner's Rich Engelhardt, Deputy County Manager. I've been tasked with the collection of information. I've received all this from our different department heads. In fact, Brian Pettit is in the audience here, and we're still at our limit of 5, so we're honoring the public health order. And Jody Smith is out in the lobby, and I've got them kind of on standby in case there's some real detailed questions that they could address for you all. So, but what we wanted to do, and John, I'm always just amazed how you can fill time, and while I was trying to get myself set up here, so I appreciate that. These construction projects are absolutely critical to certainly the way that we do business. So I'm going to walk through the slides here and kind of the agenda. And first off, we're going to review staff recommendations on the construction of projects based on a tiered approach. And we had put it into a matrix that I'll just show you kind of as an example of how we did this. And we'd come to a resolution that we would talk about different tiers, and the first would be in around safety, the second around critical infrastructure, and then the third were those that may have financing partners involved. And instead of showing those separately and individually. I've displayed those in red, so I can, when we go through these, you'll be able to see how that works. Then the fourth tier were projects that are scheduled to resume once the public health order is lifted. And then secondly, we do have a list of projects that John asked us to go back and take a look at that we could postpone, honestly, due to the economic conditions and what you're going to be talking about a little bit later on regarding finances. So those will be revisited as part of the 2021 budget or even further down the road. So that's kind of the process we'll go through here. I know you can't read this because I can't, but I just wanted to show you the matrix that we use. So this was just gathering it all and putting it into a format that we could then sort it out from staff's standpoint. So the Tier 1 projects, Tier 1, again, is based around safety. And so these are public works projects that we focused on. So the ones that we're recommending that we move forward due to the recommendation of a number of different rationale behind each, the Upper Castle Creek Bridge, the Castle Creek Trail, the ABC Highway 82 intersection signal repair, and the Redstone flood prevention. As you see are in red, and all of those have partners that are agencies that are helping finance those. The ABC Highway 82 intersection, it's my understanding the county permits it, but it's a city kind of ran project. We put it on here as a safety because we are a partner in that. I think all indications are that the city's still going to move ahead with replacing that light that was hit and knocked down. So, and then the last four there are ditch drainage work, road safety vegetation clearing, landfill slurry wall, and then road striping. So this is a list from Public Works, and I don't know if the thought is that you want to stop here, talk about each of these individually, get a little extra feedback. But again, this is a staff's recommendation. These would be the ones that we would request moving forward based on safety.
Steve, I just have a quick question.
Go ahead.
The ABC intersection signal, that's the partner would be CDOT and the city, or is the city involved in that since wasn't it a city truck who hit the signal?
It's my understanding it's city and CDOT and the county
Okay.
From a permitting standpoint.
And it was also my understanding that there's a time frame for that repair, which may be later than sooner.
6 feet away, Brian.
He's
Hey,
good.
Kelly?
Wait, Brian's coming to answer.
Yes, and the city's planning
Okay.
on starting April 20th.
The city is.
Yep, so they're actually, it's a joint project between CDOT and the city of Aspen. CDOT's allowing them to do it because they did the damage, and they're planning on April 20th as their start date.
Okay, that's something I needed to hear because I had heard originally it was going to be an unknown period out somewhere. So that's good. Okay.
Yep, the council still has to approve the budget for the project, but that's anticipated to happen.
Great. Thank you, Brian.
Steve,
Hey, Kelly?
sorry, can you clarify the difference between the red and the black text for me?
Yes. Yeah, Kelly, again, the red, because we had 4 tiers, and Tier 3 was just projects that had partnerships, funding partnerships or agencies along with them. And so what we did is we took those, we put them into the different, in fact, you're going to find all of them in these Tier 1s. There's one more that I'm going to move into with facilities that all have either granting components to it or other partners are involved in the project, just not a county project.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Okay, thanks, I appreciate this. I think with wildfire season coming up, things like the vegetation clearing and drainage work, ditch work continue to be important also. Thank you.
So just to be clear, are we getting direction on each section then? And
Well, I think given the way that this is going to be presented virtually to try to make this work is we're going to have to switch out staff a little bit. So I was just hoping that we could get any questions asked about these, and then when we move on to the others, they'll kind of switch out in the room here.
So maybe as we go through the Tier 1, if we can just kind of get an either okay or feedback from the board as a whole as to whether these make sense or not to move forward with, that would be great. And then we'll also get to ones we're delaying towards the end, and we'll get the same.
So I want to know what the landfill slurry wall is. And Kelly, you have your hand up. Is that a similar question?
Yeah, a question and a comment. Yeah, I would note that when the public health order originally addressed this, my question to staff was about projects which we know have safety concerns. So the Castle Creek Bridge, which we know to be very low rated. So I think it is appropriate that it's on here. I think it would be helpful for the public for more explanation about the Castle Creek Trail, which what the safety regards are for that, as opposed to just working on a recreational amenity. Thanks. Otherwise, I'm okay with the list.
Great. Maybe the first is the slurry wall, was the question I heard. This is to intercept leachate, which has passed through the waste mass before it gets into our stormwater system. This is a requirement by CDPHE in the state of Colorado that we manage any groundwater contamination. So basically, it's a sub-grade slurry wall that intercepts leachate and gets it into our system so we can process it. Does that answer the question?
Okay. Yes, thank you.
Okay. And the Castle Creek Trail, we've got the last 40% of this project to be done, includes the platform widening and additional rockfall mitigation. Those are really the big reasons to get this project completed.
Hey, Steve, Greg here. Question.
Go ahead, Greg.
I just wanted to make sure that I'm okay with all of these projects. I'm going to go with staff's recommendation. It makes sense to me that we have to continue these in some cases, and it's essential that we keep going on them. I want to make sure that when the companies that come in to work on this, whether it's CDOT and their contractors, anyone else involved in this, understands our public health order and our social distancing, our hygiene recommendations. They've got to be the exemplars of how to do this in a situation like this. I'm concerned because when I leave our part of the valley, you can go down in other parts of, down the valley, and you'll see people who's just much more relaxed in their way of doing things, their way of working. And I don't want to see that here. I'd hate to see a CDOT crew not towing the line when it comes to safety, hygiene, regarding the COVID response. So just a note to them if they're coming in.
And Greg, I can address that. One of the parts of the evaluation was whether we can ensure social distancing as part of the crews coming in. Commissioner Newman and I had a conversation a while back around the courthouse, and we have given the directors of these departments that are overseeing the absolute authority to just stop the job and send them home. I mean, it's on the contractors to do this, so a lot of risk here if they don't do that. So we feel confident that we can manage that. Are we good on?
Okay.
Are we good on these?
Yeah, I think so, Rich.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to move into the next set of Tier 1 safety. I'm sure you'll see Brian a little later here. He'll be back. So these recommending going forward, these are the facilities. There's two really projects here. One is the courthouse renovation Phase 1 completion, which you can see includes some building security, egress, furniture installation, and moving furniture and moving into that Phase 1. And we have a lot to talk about, like I mentioned, on this courthouse and really get you up to speed on where that's at. And then the second part is the jail safety audit and upgrades. And this is based on the conditions of the jail. As you know, we had we commissioned a study to come in and look at the safety within the jail itself. And we're going to allocate some funds that we're going to go to our programming, and looking at it for the long term is take those dollars and still put it towards having an auditor come in, or a company come in, and they're going to go through the jail. They're going to give us construction recommendations and do construction drawings so that we can get this bid out, and they'll do it on a priority basis. And again, it's all about the safety within the jail itself. So they've already been hired. We did an RFP. We've got them on board. Again, they're held by the same condition. I think it's just a one or a two person. I think maybe in a one person operation that comes in and does this assessment for us. And then they do their work at home to put the plans and specs in place for us. And so Jody's here now. And again, this is just kind of let you know that, in fact, you'll be pleased to know that Jody was able to get a temporary TCO on phase one work over there. The city was just absolutely gracious in working with us, understanding the conditions that we have there. We'll have some punch list items that we'll have to clean up. And again, we're going to get into that in more detail, but this is just letting you know that phase one, we're still moving that portion forward.
Steve, I have a question.
Go ahead, Patty.
So phase one, when it wraps, because we were going to proceed right into phase two, now we'll have a little delay here until things in the environment have changed, and then we'll move into phase two. So we're just kind of wrapping up phase one to get that complete, and then we'll take a little pause or reevaluate.
And that's going to be the discussion here at the end of this. Is one of our recommendations is to try to wrap this up without doing phase two right now.
Right, that's what.
And then postpone it out for further discussions based on economics.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
That's kind of where I was going to.
Yep. Any questions on those two? They're pretty straightforward.
Can I make a comment? Jody Smith from Facilities. I just wanted to also just clarify that even for the jail audit, that is 2 people coming up for that, and getting down to even the nitty-gritty of asking them to come in separate vehicles, that we understand that might be inconvenient coming from Denver, but the no carpooling was important to us and to their safety, and so we've taken it to that level. And even when we begin doing the wrap-up of this phase one, it's the same thing, carpooling separately and staying that 6 feet.
Okay, and then the last item were just our telecommunication projects, and there's a number of them that are going on there. We didn't list those out specifically, but again, those are all kind of in the backcountry, top of mountains. Social distancing definitely can be adhered to, and truly is safety with broadband communications. We good there?
I think so.
Okay. All right.
Thanks,
I'm gonna move. Jody will be back for further dialogue on this other one. So let's move into the tier 2. These are critical infrastructures that we're recommending moving forward. Again, starting with Public Works, there's capital maintenance overlay projects, and you can see there that's Maroon Creek Road, Eagle Glen, Horseshoe, Orchard Estates, and Watson Divide areas. And then the other is a road crack sealing on Owl Creek, Brush Creek, and McLean Flats roads. So again, I think Brian can talk to the reason that we see these as critical infrastructure, and we'd be happy to answer questions. He's back in the room now.
I've got a question, Steve.
Go ahead, George.
And John, you may be addressing this next, but my question is, with these capital projects and our projected budget for the end of 2020 and then going to 2021, are we still comfortable that we've got the resources going towards capital that we're not going to need going into operations?
Yeah, I think George, what you're going to see, we have 3 kind of revenue scenarios right now, and it's probably too early to tell where we're going to end up. But the worst case scenario, we'll probably need to start making some more significant reductions. And frankly, the Road and Bridge Fund is our most challenging one right now in relation to how revenues are impacting it. For 2020, we're comfortable moving these projects forward. What really is an unknown to us is what the recovery time is. Is this an 18-month recovery, a 24-month recovery, or 36-month recovery? I think right now, most entities are looking at anywhere from 12 to 18 months. We're looking at probably 18 to 24 months. So it may require some slowing down in the future, George. But right now, particularly on maintenance projects, oftentimes you end up paying more in the long run if you don't keep up with them now.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Steve, can I ask a question?
Sure, Patty.
Yeah, I think the financial issue is one thing, but the public perception is another. They're going to see us out there working on roads when they can't even go out with one guy in an excavator and dig a foundation for a project for a residential construction going up. I'm not, and I understand the issue of if we don't do it now, the cost later is going to be greater. So if we're going to move forward on these, we need to make it very clear to the public why we're considering this critical need. Because I'm concerned the public's not going to see it that way, especially in light of the input we're receiving from the construction industry. And it's an issue of fairness again, but so hopefully we'll be able to step in there with the public. I'm not sure how much education we can do to get the message across, but I think that's important.
And Patty, that's part of the reason we divided these into, tiers, is to make that conversation hopefully a little easier for you guys to have.
Yeah. I just think that's going to be of concern. Why are you spending taxpayer dollars to do this, and why are you allowed to do it when we're not allowed to dig our foundation with one guy in an excavator?
And if I could add, this is giving us reassurance with our contractors that these projects will take place. My guess is these road projects will be into the summer. So we may be beyond this public health order that we have this time, but
who knows?
But we don't know.
And that's why we assume through June.
Yeah, we need to kind of keep things moving along, but still, public perception is not always easy.
Okay, Kelly.
Thanks, Steve. Patty, I appreciate you bringing the equity topic up repeatedly. I think it's appropriate. I guess I would want to think of these in terms of like projects. If we're going to ask, what's fair. And so for me, I'm wondering, if there's a private road that's experiencing, some failure, would that type of construction there fall under an essential public safety, which is allowed by our public health order? For example, again, like the road example I just gave, or if somebody's boiler in their house goes out, I understand that they would be able to bring somebody in to do that kind of construction. So from an equity, conversation, it would help me to understand what similarly could happen in the public that we're saying we need to do for our county projects.
Yeah, Kelly. So those types of either maintenance or repair that are related to public safety, the contractors still need to meet the social distancing guidelines, but those types of projects are able to move forward if you were to have a road failure situation where, let's say a road was getting undercut by drainage or such, and you needed to get emergency work in there, whether it's a private road or public road, that type of work is allowed.
Okay.
Did that answer your question, I guess? Okay.
Hearing no more, we'll go ahead and move forward then with the facilities. And again, thank you, Brian. The Health and Human Service Building, Schultz Building, this is just some design work that would be done, anticipating a boiler replacement project. We feel we can move that forward, anticipation that it would happen after the order is lifted. So this is one that's just setting us up to be able to do that. The HVAC operating system upgrades for the library. Jody's back in the room and can explain a little bit about why we need to move this forward. If you could, Jody.
Yes, so we have a antiquated building operating system that is no longer supported by Train. So, So we need to upgrade the library, the jail, and the human services building. So we have funding to do all three. We've already done the courthouse as part of the remodel, and we've already done this administrative building. So by completing that project, then we can, be able to better support it. It creates better efficiency in our equipment running and environmentally efficient. So that's where we're headed to get those done. And we have not even started on that, and so I would anticipate that that's an after the June anyway. That would, and it's mostly remote. There's not a whole lot that they have to do on our on-site.
Thanks, Jody.
And then if you could talk about the Public Works exterior repairs.
Sure, we hold this money each year based on the Fleet Building and the Road and Bridge buildings out on the Public Works site are heavily used, and it's big equipment, and there's a tendency to have damage on the facility on occasion. Sometimes they'll back into a wall, and it kind of offsets it. We have to repair that. The siding gets bent or damaged to where it needs to be repaired to keep water from filtering in and creating other problems. And then occasionally the metal frame on the roll-up doors gets damaged, and then we can no longer use the door. So we kind of have to keep that as an opportunity to get that fixed when it happens. So far, nothing that I know of.
So again, I think it's just letting the board know that if we do have something like that, we've got the funding and the ability, if you guys support that, to just go out and get those repairs done as quickly as we can.
Thanks. I have a little bit of a harder time with that one because, again, we're not making accommodations for people who back into their garage, or something like that to get fixed. So I do just want to be fair and think we need to treat ourselves and regard our investments along the same ways that we're asking other people to treat and regard their own.
I appreciate it, and I think probably the only time we would go out and do it if the structure was compromised and creating a safety issue. We would certainly need to go out and get it addressed right away. But other than that, just for minor cosmetic, we would not go out and do that.
No.
Steve, can I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead, George.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear that even though construction projects have been suspended, certainly any residence that has a health or safety issue, whether it's plumbing or electric or water, that can be addressed. We're not excluding those issues at all.
And I think
Rich, I'd like to comment on all of the Tier 2 projects. I would see them as waiting until the public health order is lifted and doing it later in the summer. And right now, before the order is lifted, we can be working on the Tier 1 projects. That's the way I see it. We still are would like to do the tier 2 this year under this year's budget, and but they're not urgent and they can wait till a little bit later in the summer. Hopefully the public health order is lifted by that time. We don't really know yet, but that's sort of our projection.
Yeah, and I think Brian kind of talked to it, is that some of these have contracts with them that we're just kind of given assurance that those will be out there. But to his point, a lot of these can be done. We are hoping after the order's lifted. So it's just a matter of, it was critical infrastructure in the way that we built this, but we will do all we can to push it past that point. Okay. Tier 4, these are projects that were scheduled after the public health order has been lifted. So as you can see, we've got quite a few that the staff is recommending that we just push out. And again, we had set this up earlier based on an April 17th date, and then the new public health order came out for the end of April. And realistically, John's got us really thinking past that. I mean, if this thing's pushed out further. So all of these we feel can still wait. But at some point in time, we need to probably come back and revisit them if it gets extended quite a ways out, because some of them do have contracts associated with them. But here's a list of those, and I don't know that we need to debate any of those. It's just we're doing our best to get those outside of this process, and we'll move those forward once we have the opportunity to do it. They're all in the budget, and plans are to pick up where we left off.
Steve, I have a question.
Yeah, Patty?
On the dynamic message sign, is that the sign before the Brush Creek parking ride? It's in the CDOT right-of-way. States allowing construction projects. We've just postponed that, and to me, in some cases, I think it is a public safety issue. I don't know what big of impact that would be, because we've postponed that a year already because of sign location. I think it'd be better to get that done sooner than later. Is there a way? Do you think it could be done before the winter season comes up? Or I don't know how the rest of the board feels about it, but that's something. It's not just for convenience as to whether the parking lot's full. It also can be used in cases of fire or road accidents or flooding and mudding. So I think maybe I would like to see the dynamic message sign move forward.
Yeah, and I guess I can address that. There is like a 4-month lead time on ordering the sign, so we've signed the contract. So I think it's going to be well beyond the public health order, and that's the timing of the project.
Those are circumstances out of our control.
They are.
Okay. Answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, are we good on those? All right.
I think so.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Well, that's nice. I've got to add to click in here. I'm not sure what's going on there, but just so you know that we also have got some that we've deferred as part of, again, the reassessment of the economic condition that we're in. So you've got Maroon Creek Wall, and these are the money that was actually in the budget itself. River Park Center's rooftop units, HHS boiler replacement we talked about. We'll go ahead and get it designed, but we'll push that out. The HHS interior replacement, there was some flooring and painting that we were going to do. Exterior repairs to that building. Fleet window replacement, courthouse phase 2, the DOLA grant. We're going to ask for deferral on those funds, and I'm hoping our relationship with DOLA and kind of what they're going through with other communities that we'll get some leniency there. I had mentioned the jail programming and space planning needs. Again, that was an assessment based on what the future would look like with the jail, and we're going to postpone that. The South Side air conditioning unit replacement, Jody thinks we can go another year without that, and then some energy measures on this building here. And then I mentioned it's not all inclusive. Staff continues to go through this. The other day, I think we're going to postpone some furniture replacement in this building. Wait and see. I think that's an $85,000 item, and see what we can do to kind of build up the coffers for John to be able to kind of take a look at our overall financial plan. So those are those items. I don't know if there's any in there of interest before we move into having our discussion on the courthouse. Okay.
Rich, on the jail programming and space planning, does that have to do with our long-range plan for what we want to do with the jail to make it better for the female inmates and the people with mental health issues?
Yes, it is, Steve. That was the money that we were going to set aside to bring in an outside consultant that can take a look at, again, the mental health, the type of jail facility that today's conditions would require. But we felt that we would better be spending, given the economic conditions, is divert that $150,000 towards doing the improvements to the existing jail from a safety standpoint.
Yeah, and I totally agree with doing the safety things immediately, as soon as possible. Deferring long-range plans for the jail, though, could turn into a safety issue in terms of mental health safety for a lot of people in the community, because there are people who really need to be somewhere else besides in the jail, who need to be in some sort of a mental health program, and we just don't have the ability to do that right now. So I see that one could become more of a public health and safety type of issue, not just for the jail inmates, but for the general population in the county. So I would I'd put an asterisk by that one, and if we can do that sooner than later, I would personally try to do that.
You good with that? We will do that. We will certainly earmark
let's
that
make
one.
sure we get agreement from all of the board members on that. I'm not seeing anything. Can we get a thumbs up maybe? Or down to what Steve just suggested?
Well, this is George. What I understand what Steve was suggesting was just sort of keep that as sort of perhaps higher on the list, but continue to go with the staff's recommendation in terms of projects deferred for the 2021 budget. I think that's what Steve was saying.
I would agree, George. We need to do the immediate safety things in the jail right now. But that one has zero money. It's being put out to 2021. At our retreat, that was one of our top 5 issues that had to do with jail things as our big rocks. And here it is. It's partly a budgetary thing. Maybe we don't have the money to do it as soon as we want, but I think it's still more important than being put out to 2021 with no money in the kitty right now.
John, was there, I guess I don't know, what was the budget allocated in the 2020 budget?
150,000 for that study, George. We did not have dollars allocated for safety improvements at the jail, so that's going to be a supplemental appropriation. We are out to bid on that. Are we out to bid now? Are we preparing our bid for the jail safety improvements?
Yeah, with the assessment is underway. Yes.
I'm sorry, the assessment is underway, and then we're going to bid out those improvements and bring back a supplemental to you. So we're going to repurpose that 150 into the physical improvements and revisit the jail study in 2021. I think what I hear Steve saying is, given where that was during the retreat discussion and the potential for it to continue to develop as a public safety issue, he may want to see both moving forward in 2020, I think is what we're understanding in the room. So that, I guess, Steve, to double check that and to get feedback from the board.
Yeah, that's what my preference would be, if we could move that one up in the list.
I guess I'm sorry, I'm still a little confused because remember we talked about short-term, immediate fixes, and then long-term. And so it sounds like we're doing the short-term still now, John, and we're just putting off from the long-term until 2021?
We're putting off the planning for the long term because we don't know what the long term is right now, George, whether it is investments in our current jail facility, is it investments in other types of programming, whether it be mental health programming, substance abuse programming, other types of diversion opportunities. That would define our longer term kind of investments. And so our plan was to do both the short-term safety improvements this year and start the planning process to define those longer-term investments in parallel this year. Does that help?
Oh, okay. And so we would still have the opportunity to do that as we move even into the third quarter, depending on how the economy is looking and the health status, correct?
Yeah, I think we're all shaking our heads. Well, except for me, I'm looking to see what everyone else's head is doing. But yeah, all the other heads are shaking. Yes.
Kelly?
Who's there?
I would like to see us continue to keep programming and space planning on the board for 2020 if we can find money to allocate to it, because if we have an economic recession and could potentially be in the position to take advantage of some capital projects with cash on hand, given that this was a priority for us, we would need to know what we would want to do. So I don't want to put that off, because then we would be behind the opportunity to kind of invest money in our community in a construction project if we don't know what that project would look like.
I'm sorry, Kelly. Everyone was paying attention to Aloysius. You're going to have to repeat all that. Just kidding. Just kidding.
I will say it again. So now that he's like, talk more loudly. So
I was kidding, Kelly. I think everyone got
okay,
you.
okay.
Yeah.
We are just looking at him while you're talking.
Okay.
He's so cute.
Yeah, I know. The answer was yes.
So I think Steve and Kelly, I'm hearing, are in the same profile, and it's kind of contingent on how our finances look a month or two out, which is basically going to be the story we're about to tell you on finances too, is that we probably need to get a little bit farther. Is there general, so I believe Steve and Kelly are saying the same thing. Is there agreement from the board on that?
Well, for me, Steve, can I?
Greg's thumbs up. Go ahead, Patty.
I think as it plays out, what comes back after an evaluation and costs and where we are financially, I agree. But I think all those factors need to be taken into consideration because it is a priority. It did come out of our board retreat, and it is definitely public safety. But I think as all those other issues play out, we'll be moving into a time frame where we can actually put boots to the ground and actually get some work done. I don't know what I just said to you,
the big
John,
one for all of us is how bad's this recession going to be? How long is it going to take to dig our way out of it? And we don't know that yet.
Well, I can't wait for our next discussion.
So it sounds like we're good to do that. We'll keep our eye on that one, and if we can advance it based on priority of the BOCC, we'll certainly do that. So, okay, on the next, there's 4 slides here, and they get pretty detailed. And what I might suggest is let me walk through these, and then Jody can come in and clean up the mess that I make in doing so. But just kind of give you an idea of our thoughts behind the courthouse itself. And I know we've got about 20 minutes here to get through this. I know you're prompt with your time. So courthouse phase 1, I mentioned earlier that we did receive the temporary occupancy approval. However, there are some punch list items that need to be done, but we're recommending that those be completed after the public health order is lifted. I think they're minor things that can be done, and we can just get back in and finish those up. To give you an idea of what was done under phase 1 and was completed, the garden level, there was courtroom 3, judges' chambers, restroom, meeting room, detention holding area, elevator access, attorney-client meeting room, and then on the main level, accessible lift. I believe they still need to come in and certify the lift. Probation's restroom, district attorney's and kitchen, along with one attorney meeting room and the clerk Kirk new space. So that was part of the phase 1 that was finished up. Now, we've been talking with FCI, and again, this is where you get into these contractual arrangements with our contractors. So if they've bid the project as a whole, so now we've got to talk about how that affects their contract and their subs. But one of the things that staff is recommending is that to make the building functional, to be able to kind of come to a point that we can back away from phase 2, there's some critical items here that really need to be kind of finished up that were included as part of the phase 2. So access control, it's already been purchased and that can be installed. Completing the concrete sidewalk ramp from the jail to the courthouse. And again, that's just for the detainee transport back and forth. From a safety standpoint, the camera system installed. Jody had reported that whenever they went and tore the floor up, that there's some unevenness there. So they're recommending, the underfloor waistline is part of a piping system that we do need to do. But the public hallway must be leveled and accessible for a safety standpoint rather than putting the carpet down. And we'll talk about that a little more. The elevator upgrade for the safety, secure detainee transport, minimal work in the court staff kitchen. Again, not going into a full break room, but no sink would be added there. So again, a minimal. The garden level jury room and attorney-client meeting room, we should get that completed up. And then the radiant heaters installed on the second floor in the garden level, controlled by one system. And this is one of the items that we were going to be coming to the board with supplemental. When we got into this, the system was in bad shape. And for us to be able to do the work we needed to do in there, it was about a $338,000 expense, or $383,000, 400, shy of 400. It was a big ticket item, but we had to move forward based on where we were at in the construction, knowing that it was a decision that just made sense to do. And we were going to come back to the board with that in hopes that as the project went on, we could find savings in other areas and then kind of clean it up at the end here. So from a phase 2 standpoint, that's what we're talking about. And then what we would postpone on from a cost savings deferral standpoint right now on the garden level is we would postpone the carpet in the public hallways. We would leave those concrete. Postpone the detainee secure gate and barrier wall between the courthouse and the jail. Postpone all sidewalk and snow melt and landscape. Postpone final work on the fire access. The Alpine Legal Service would move into the existing space as is, no larger, and then pretrial office to remain as is. On the main level, we would hold off right now on security checkpoint with that, and Jody can talk a little more when we get to the questions here on Judge Boyd and Ron Ryan have agreed to how to handle security there. They have put in the network and the powers in place to install equipment, but we're going to hold off on the purchase of the equipment. And then wood flooring, which to the board's delight may work in your favor, of that we may need to go in and refinish it and not put the carpet down on that right now. Those floors are gorgeous, for sure. And again, the carpet was try to soften the noise echo within the building. And then on the second level, this is where the bigger impact is. That on the second level, this is no further work would take place on that second floor. So we would postpone the abatement project. All the flooring and carpet would remain the same. Both courtrooms remain as is. The judge's chambers, court reporter, all as is. court staff to determine to use the open space for jury room due to the reduced scope. Added restrooms for the judges and jury room would not be done, and then we do not do the two planned attorney-client meeting spaces. And then on the exterior side of it, we would postpone the installation of the exterior stair. We have already purchased those stairs. We would have to store those someplace, and we wouldn't even put the stairs up because we were talking about optically, we could have a crane come in and put those up, but if we cut a hole in the wall, then that opens up all kinds of ADA and egress issues. So at some point in the future, whenever the board authorizes us to move forward, we'll just store those stairs until that project moves forward. So with that, I'm going to let Jody just speak to this just real quickly if there's anything I can or anything that she can answer. I know this is all ran through it pretty quickly, but it gives you a sense of how we would take a step back from the second phase of the courtroom project.
Right. The only thing I would add is that I have not had an opportunity to share these cost saving or deferral list with the judge, with Judge Boyd or the court clerk. These are just ideas that we came up with. We'll definitely want to vet that with them just to ensure there isn't any real mandates that we're cutting out. The other thing is we'll have to do some pretty magical moves with the city building department, because and they're totally on board with us to work with us on how do we pause this, and then if there's any other revisions that we have to make, we'll just need to work with them on that permitting and putting it on hold. And then again, working with FCI and Anderson Hallis Architects, how do we pause their services also. So we got a little work to do ahead of us. And I'm open for questions if anybody has any.
Okay, any questions? Just speak up, anybody.
Or if there's anything you're delighted with, like the wood floors.
I'm delighted with the wood floors. Steve, I do have a question. I'm not,
Yeah.
it plays into the courthouse, but have we heard anything more about the parking in front of the courthouse on Main Street, or are we just deferring that till after the crisis is over? Because I've postponed talking with Jeff Woods at the city with the thought of Arbor Day and trees. I don't think that'll happen this year.
Yeah, Patty, I think all of those discussions, just like we're trying to kind of catch up now on our day-to-day work and conversations, I think those have been
I just want to make sure we hadn't heard anything more from the city. Okay. Because I had told the board I was going to reach out to Jeff Woods, and I made the wise decision to defer that until things move forward in probably next year.
One of the actions that we did take is that we are working with the carpet manufacturer right now to see what it would take for us to either cancel the carpet order and or go ahead and have it delivered and then just store it. So those are like just some of the maneuvers that we're making to see what's in the best interest of our dollar and in our relationships and contractually.
Yeah, that's a good point. Jody's been working real closely with FCI, which I got to tell you, has just been amazing through this process of really looking at all of their commitments they have with their subs and in a midstream stop in what that means. So it's all contractually related. So they're working on that end, and then we're doing the same with them on how their contract looks with us.
And I would also just add, if I may, that we could not be positioned in a better place to be put on hold than we are today. Mm-hmm. I mean, if this was going to happen, this was absolutely the time to do it. Because if we had been a month out, it would be really difficult. And if we had been a month before, it would have been much more difficult. So wrapping up this phase one and getting done what we can, I think that there's a question whether or not we wait till the order is completely lifted in June, which I think is the direction, or can we do some maintenance little things like the elevator inspection, and that we can represent that at a later time as we start to figure out our scope.
Okay, Rich, do you have anything else? I think that might be your last.
That was
slide.
it. That was, well, here's my last slide, but yes, that's it.
Who's got a
Beep,
question?
beep, beep, beep. That's all, folks.
Looks
Yeah,
like,
Kelly.
looks like Kelly has a,
What is the expected cost savings from deferring phase 2 and 3?
Kelly, we're working on that right now. FCI, we've asked them to really dig into it and find out. They've got line items, some that have been committed through a contractual arrangement that they're taking a look at and backing those off. But we're hoping to see, decent savings here that we can turn back and then reappropriate later whenever things are ready to roll. But we'll come back with a number. We're in the process of doing that. I guess our desire was to make sure the board was on board with this step to really start dialing it down.
And I would just say right now it's more kind of cash flow. I think our anticipation is within our 5-year plan, Kelly, that we'd still anticipate completing the scope of the work on the courthouse. It just won't be on the schedule that we're talking about. So it's really deferring the payments or costs to another budget year where maybe our revenues have caught up a little more.
And one of the things that probably, to be transparent, is that if we remain in the contract, it could cost us a percentage to refire back up again. So it's just part of that business. So.
Sure, I understand.
Okay.
Well, appreciate it for our next conversation. So thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, board. We appreciate it, and we'll come back.
Thank you, Rich. At this point, we are scheduled for a 15-minute break, which I need to get a cup of tea, among other things. Does everybody need 15 minutes, or should we make it a little bit less?
I'm good with 10.
I'm good with 10.
I'm good with 10.
Yeah, 10 minutes. Okay with me. John, can we get Ann and Connie down ready for this in 10 minutes?
Yeah, Ann's going to join us electronically, and Connie is already floating out in the lobby there.
Okie doke.
Okay, we can then. We'll see you all soon.
Oh, this is even more fun next. Oh, yeah. I'm not even going to worry.
We got our first 100. Okay, I think we're on, Steve. Are we on? Okay, we're on.
My audio's not working. I'm going to log off and log back in, but I'm here.
You're underwater, you sound like.
So, Steve, we were going to recommend just a small change in agenda. Brian Pettit was staying around for open discussion, just to kind of give the board an update on the changes at the landfill. We were hoping that we could maybe have him go ahead of the revenue discussion so that he can get out of here.
Ron, you're muted.
Am I muted? Oh, sorry about that. So we had a small change recommended for this portion, which Brian Pettit was staying for open discussion, just to give the board a update on changes at the landfill that you've probably read about a little bit, and the whys. Wondering if we could have him go with that open discussion portion before we do revenue, so we can get him out of here.
Sure.
Okay.
Great. Thank you for that change, Steve. I'm Brian Pettit. I'm the Public Works Director. And we've been having a continual problem at the landfill at the scale house, where people they have a lot of time on their hands. They're cleaning out the garage. They're doing little remodels of their own, and they're wanting to haul this material to the landfill. Yesterday, we turned around a little over 40 different people who were bringing up non-essential landfill items. So what we'd like to do, and what we did today, and with the board's consent would like to continue to have in place, is the gate down at Highway 82 closed to any residential dumping. So we've given the code to the gate to our commercial haulers, both roll-offs and municipal solid waste, so they can continue to bring things to the landfill, but not to allow residents to access the landfill, because it just became difficult. We had irate people that had traveled to the landfill, and we had a lot of public contact that we're trying to protect our employees from. One of our gatekeepers is out on medical leave right now because she needs to be. So it was a way of protecting the public, protecting our employees, and making it abundantly clear that we're only allowing commercial hauling to the landfill through the public health order. I think it's consistent with the public health order. I talked to Karen Kinnaman today. She agreed. And then this will be the last thing I say with regard to it. We are putting out a little bit more information right now to our landscapers. That seems to be a gray area for people on whether they can or cannot complete landscaping in Pitkin County. So the JIC through the IMT will be doing a little more messaging with regard to landscapers, and certainly try to keep them out of the landfill as well. But I'm looking for feedback on this issue.
Steve, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Patty.
What about recycling? As you know, now we have limited people's recycling abilities, and a lot of people depend upon the landfill to take their mixed recycling there. So can they still do that? Or what are they supposed to do with it in the next? That's a public health issue, to keep all that stuff at your house.
So we've got
What's that?
There are a couple ideas we've come up with. I think.
Oh, really?
If there's an issue, Patty, that's it. And what we would like people to do is try to find another resource. If there's a neighbor that can help them out, or just hold on to it for the next 26 days until the public health order is lifted. Those are really the alternatives that we brainstormed today with Karen Kinnaman and Kathy Hall.
Well, the other issue is, it's our understanding that South Canyon is closed, and that's a recycling spot too. I think we need to come up with an alternative for people. We can't expect people to keep their recycling. They're gonna just be dumping it in the trash, and we don't want that to happen. I mean, you can't, for some people, keeping 26 days of recycling creates a health hazard, so they put it outside, becomes a bear attractant, a nuisance. So maybe we could have further discussion to find some option or opportunity. I don't know how the rest of the board feels about that, but I think it's a concern.
And South Canyon is in the same situation we are.
Kelly, and then Greg.
Thanks. Yeah, we absolutely have to find an alternative. Asking people to keep that at their house is not prudent on us. It's not helpful. It's not good leadership. We need to find alternatives. Can you help me understand, Brian, just illustrate what the interactions are happening at the landfill that are in defiance of the public health order?
So people are driving to the scale house. They're within 6 feet of the person that's at the window dealing with them, and there is a lot of discussion and sometimes angry discussion about whether someone can or cannot take their construction debris up to the working face at that point. And what we've said...
I'm not hearing you well. I'm very sorry, Brian. I heard you say it's...
I wonder if you might come around here.
Scale house.
We're going to move Brian to closer to the phone.
How's this? So
that's good. Better.
Oh, great. It's people coming to the scale house. Again, it's many people, and they're having arguments with the person in charge of the scale on whether they have essential dumping or non-essential dumping. And in many cases, these are small construction projects or people that are just cleaning out their garage because they have time on their hands. And so in an effort to provide some public separation from our employees there, this was an idea to implement.
George?
So back to Patty's concern in terms of recycling. It seems like we can close off the landfill to general trash construction materials. However, we should be able to keep the recycling bin open. I know that I've got a recycle card, and I don't even have to go to the gate. I just drive. I'm going to the recycle bin. I just flash my card through the window, and I just move forward. So it seems like there's a way to maintain recycling just through that easy method, and then just eliminate the other components of trash going in there.
Greg first.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I think I was unmuted there for a while. But I just wanted to say I've been hearing a lot about this as well. A lot of concerned people. Some of the local people who have property and ranches are doing their springtime clearing, and they regularly take stuff and drop it. Is there no way we can have a system that allows an individual to bring a dump load and dump it without getting within 6 feet of someone else? Is there just simply no way we can allow that?
Yeah, it's a matter of monitoring the weights that are coming into the landfill. So they would have to cross the scale in order for us to measure how much they have in the trucks at that time. I think that George's idea of allowing some recycling to occur, maybe we can set up a way of doing that, even down below the gate. Maybe we put a recycling dumpster down below the gate off of Highway 82 for people to use. That's an idea.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Brian, let me just jump in there. I'm sorry, Steve, but ever since the Mid-Valley Recycling Center closed, unless you have trash and recycling pickup, the only option left is to use the landfill for recycling. And I can't imagine there's a lot of people that would be utilizing it, but for those that need it, there is no other option unless you want people just to start to burn, and you don't want burning going on as well.
Right. Okay. I understand.
Thanks, Brian.
Kelly?
Is there cell phone service up there? Is there a way to post a number for people to call into the gate or the scale house rather than have to approach it and talk via video?
It is possible. We have cellular reception there.
But they still need to be weighed.
We still have separation issues potentially on the face that we have to manage, and yeah.
Yeah, these are all these are things we've dealt with, and we're trying to accommodate the public the best we could. But yesterday, it really hit a critical mass where we had just more residential hauling than we actually had commercial hauling, and it was people that it was non-essential items. So that's the problem we find ourselves up against.
Is there a way to maybe, I don't know, post one of our movable electric signs towards the entrance of the landfill to warn that if we're going to allow people with just recycling and, you know, maybe what they can bring and what they can't bring?
Yeah. But yes, yes is the answer. We can put those signs up. What we found is people will go as far as they possibly can until they're told to turn around. And that's why we went to the gate closure at Highway 82. We avoid that employee to resident contact then.
I just wanted to, it sounds as if you've got a solution. It's going to be an unpopular one, but that's what we have to do in this case. So I think we need to make sure we have a really great public information campaign around this. If it requires some ads in the paper or online, you know, however we can do it so the community understands what we're doing and why, and that they understand that it's not worth going and they should just hold on to their stuff as best they can until this order is lifted. I'm sorry, Kelly, I think I walked on you.
No, I don't support asking people to keep their recycling at home for a month or longer.
Actually, I was actually thinking about all the other dump it. I agree with you on the recycling. I think regarding all the other stuff people want to bring in and dump, that's where we're going to have to come down and alert them in advance, hopefully through the media, that they won't be able to do that.
Steve, can I? Steve?
Yeah, go ahead, Patty. You're just a small blip on this.
I think the idea of trying a dumpster below the gate is a good one, but you know what? People tend to dump in dumpsters. It's not necessarily recycling. So I think we need to have stern warning there that we have cameras at the gate that will, you know, and that they will be fined for illegal dumping. This is for recycling only. And then let us know how, if that's the decision you go with, let us know how that goes.
Okay, I think we can try that.
So it sounds like everyone, just to kind of circle back, that everyone wants a solution around recycling right now. And it sounds like the simplest option is to have a recycle bin or dump area at the gate where folks can turn around. And then we would be hauling that up, it's single stream, so we'd be hauling that up to the location where people would normally dump. We're not charging for that anyway. And we may have just a smaller dumpster for incidental kind of trash there. Also allow people to do some separation for those who are traveling to the landfill anyway. That would address the recycling, and that's probably something we could do with a hook truck pretty easily, Brian.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so that would be probably the easiest solution on recycling.
Thank you.
So I'm hearing two things. One is that we'll have a bin down by the gate for recycling, and then a smaller bin just for incidental trash, because anyone who doesn't have recycling pickup does not have trash pickup probably either.
But we charge for regular trash dumping.
Well, we may just eat it on this.
Yeah.
But we might have berries.
No, actually, we, trash drop-off is free if it's half the size of your recycling.
That's true.
That's correct. It's a 50-50 program. Yeah, I think.
So I think there's a way to. I think there's a way to address those, Brian, with a smaller bin, so it doesn't get used for big yard dumping.
Like my mattress for today, I was taking out.
Right. If there's a way to accommodate household compost too, that'd be great.
Okay.
Challenge is yours.
Greg, and then I'm going to speak.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't think I hear a solution here that's going to satisfy. I'm worried about the bins at the bottom of the hill by the gate being overloaded or overrun. Is there no way we can revisit how people visit and dump up there so that we can meet social distancing criteria, keeping the people away? Just from my experience, whenever I go up there, I would cross the scale and I talk through the window. Maybe there's a cell phone solution, as Kelly suggested. And then I drive up to the dump area where there is no one. There's a guy in a big cat, 100 yards away working. But unless there's something I don't get about this, perhaps there's a way we can, it's either that or we have to relax the rules somehow so that they don't get weighed or something. Are there any other alternatives that we can consider that might require us to forgive the fee for the next 26 days? I'm grasping at things here.
Well, I think we sacrifice a little bit the goal of the public health order. So let's be clear that the public health order is kind of designed to limit activity to essential kinds of activities. Getting your food, getting your medicine, support of a essential business. And we have been trying to honor that type of activity level. Spring cleaning is great, and it's a great time to do it when everyone's home. However, it doesn't fall under that essential activity where you encourage people to congregate at a particular area, being the landfill, where you have 40 cars. We just canceled construction projects for that kind of same reason. Now, it could be that social distancing, could we do it? But we're trying to honor only keeping open for those kind of essential public health, public safety kind of reasons. Clearly getting trash. Clearly getting the daily trash, and I think, as we've heard here, recycling removed from homes is kind of how we've been viewing that purpose versus the other discretionary kind of activities right now.
I think just to follow back on that, maybe Steve, as an agricultural guy, would have a different perspective on what's essential for, say, a rancher or a farmer that they would normally be doing. I think if it's a discretionary thing, I can put off taking stuff to the landfill for a month pretty easily, but maybe there are some people who can't. In some cases, it might be essential, and I don't know what they are. Just wanted to explore that. But I'm with you on the public health order and maintaining the strictness of it. I just want to make sure that we've considered all the options. Thank you.
So I was lucky. I went to the landfill to take all of our recycling on Saturday morning.
Just under
not knowing that this order was, we had our whole entryway was packed full of cardboard, newspapers, papers, cans, bottles. Some of it we had put in a trash can outside for the whole winter, and we were doing several months worth of stuff all at once. I was lucky I got it out of our entryway when we did. I think there might be another solution. I don't think we should put something outside the locked gate, because I'm sure people would abuse that and it would be contaminated. People would just throw trash in there.
Try it and see how it works.
Or they would be dumping their trash along the side of county road someplace. I think we should maybe think about setting up a reservation system, maybe one person every 10 minutes or every 15 minutes could come in, a regular person who's not a trash hauler. They could go, if we could set up a website real quick where you could reserve a 15-minute block when you need to arrive at the landfill at that time, and you could go in and drop your recycling or go in and drop your landscape clippings, because right now the landscapers springtime is an incredibly important time for them to be
The dumpsters out.
cleaning up the yards and the gardens from winter time, and they need someplace to put all the stuff that needs it goes into the composting in that case. So if we had a way that some people could come in, but we have it spread out evenly throughout the day, you might not get to go on the day you want because all the time slots might be full, but you could go another day. Just
Doesn't do anything for
I would
social-
note that unless you guys,
people a means.
oh,
But that
Sorry,
doesn't do
Steve,
anything
you're
about the
breaking.
social distancing at the window. That's the concern. When you're in an automobile, you're right there in the face of the of the landfill employee that's at the window.
are you guys
So,
interested in waiving fees or?
No, no.
we have a problem.
Yeah.
We raise fees.
We're
I mean,
gonna be
I'm just trying to
losing.
figure out what is the solution to.
Well, I think the solution,
so
I'm gonna
the-
put it on the table, I think the solution would be, let's try doing a recycling bin before the gate with a notice there that we are watching this on camera, so please do not abuse this. Let the public know that we're doing this to accommodate the public. And if we wanna have an adjacent smaller bin for regular trash, which usually is the 50-50, we have to trust them not to abuse. And we'll keep an eye on it. If it becomes a problem, then we have to go to another step. But I think this is something we need to try because it's simple and can be done in the next day or so.
Absolutely.
So I suggest we try that, see how it goes, and then move. In the meantime, Brian, be thinking about other creative solutions, but let's get this done now. Okay.
We can try it and see how it goes.
Does anybody have a problem with that?
We could try it.
I don't have, yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I think we still need to get a strong message out to the public that the landfill is basically closed to the public. Recycling is available for those who don't have trash pickup.
Yes, I think we
And
need.
with a new county ordinance, the majority of people do have curbside pickup, but there are some who don't, myself included.
Okay. We can.
Oh, yeah, and it sounds like from the kind of arc of the discussion that essential activity portion is really important in terms of the messaging and understanding that relationship to access to the landfill. So I think we can work with Pat. I think we can try the bins. We can report back to you guys next week if we're seeing a lot of abuse, and it gives us a little bit more time to think about creative solutions. Unfortunately, our crises seem to come to us with 12 and 24-hour kind of windows right now, where we're trying to solve them instead of taking a week or two to solve them to eliminate infection or gathering risks.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Brian.
Well, that was a little longer
Yep,
than I thought.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you. I appreciate the conversation.
I will say, I think Steve's idea was a good one because it does allow you to have that message interface with people prior to their arriving. I'll just say that.
But Kelly, I guess what I didn't understand in that is we still have the face-to-face contact with everyone coming into the landfill and our employees. We may be able to achieve better distancing at the face. So I think it solves some of the distancing issues at the face, but I don't know if it solves for the essential issues, and I don't know unless we're not collecting fees, which I think would drive a whole nother set of volume issues, how we solve it at the gate. And I think that's the point of contact, just like in motor vehicles and some of our other areas that we're trying to limit. I think let us think on it a little bit more and see if there's another solution out there. But unfortunately, all these solutions take some time and resources to implement, and we're trying to shut things down quickly. So let us look at it a little bit more. We can report back next week and
Thanks,
see where
Brian.
we're at.
Okay, Greg.
That's like 4 thank yous in one meeting, Brian.
Greg,
Is
give it a
Connie
big
out there?
thumbs up.
Okay, we're getting Connie right now. Give us just a couple minutes, and I believe Ann is with us on the phone also.
That is correct. I'm here.
Hi, Ann.
Hi.
And Kelly has a new person there with her.
I know, Kelly, you just keep bringing new
Hi, Bridget.
distractions into the meeting.
You want to say hi to everybody? Where's Granny Patty? She's right there.
Granny Patty.
Yeah. You want to say hi to her?
Budget revenue projections, yeah.
Hi, Connie. Hi.
All right.
Chairing this now.
So I'll just caveat this and then hand it over. Of course, we've been trying to project what effects this, what's really an unprecedented shock, I think, to the local economy is going to have not only this year, but on our 5-year plans. And I want to caveat this with, this is very, very early actually in the cycle of the economic impact. And so what we've done is we've developed different scenarios, kind of a best case, worst case, and middle ground scenario that has estimates of how deep, different estimates of how deep the revenue hits will be to our budget, and different assessments of how long it will take to come out of them. So our worst case scenario has the deepest revenue hits and the longest kind of bounce back. Our best case scenario has the least revenue hits and the quickest bounce back, and then we've got our scenario in the middle. The caveat to all this is we probably need another 30 or 60 days to understand how this is going to trend, how federal dollars are finally going to flow both to reimburse responding agencies. Our jurisdictions with populations under 500,000 gonna see any of the stimulus dollars and in what amounts, and you know how long does it look like it'll take both international, national, and then our local economies to bounce back, and a lot of that will have to do with how we envision the public health orders getting unwound and such. So there's a lot of information that I think we're going to get over the next 30 or 60 days that will, as we go along, we'll get a clearer view of what's going to happen with revenues. With that, we wanted the board to have an understanding of kind of how we're viewing the scenarios right now, how we see those scenarios impacting us in 2020, and then how they might potentially impact us over the 5-year plans. And with that, I will hand over to Connie and Ann.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Connie Baker. So hopefully the commissioners were all able to see the email that John sent out with the attached memo. And in this memo, we go through a few of the different sources of revenue for the county. And it actually starts with some good news, and that's property tax. So property tax for the 2020 and 2021 budget is set on assessed values that have already been set. They were based on June 30th, 2018 market conditions. So property tax will not be affected in the near term by this current crisis. And there are a number of funds in the county that rely almost exclusively on property tax for their revenue. And that's Healthy Community Fund, Open Space and Trails, Translator Fund, Library, and the Ambulance District. So these are all funds that will not see any economic impact in the near term from this COVID crisis. And then in the general fund, 23% of general fund revenue is based on property tax. Now, the next reassessment period will be done in 2021, but based on values as of June 30th of this year. So if for some reason there would be a decline in property values this June 30th, so that the next reassessment cycle were to reflect a downturn, that would affect the budgets for 2022 and 2023. Now, general fund, translator, and library districts have all taken credits on the mill levy so that we could ease off of the credits we've taken and go back up towards the full mill levy. Even if property values decline, they would have to decline more than 26% for the general fund to see a decrease in revenue in those future years in 2022 and 2023. So some good news for many funds, there's not a big impact due to the property tax. There is a note about Governor Polis's executive order, and Anne may need to jump in here, that late payment of property tax and delinquent interest has been suspended for 30 days, but it only affects the payment of the first half of property tax this year. If the governor's order is extended, it could also apply to full payments, which are due by April 30th, but we don't know that yet. Anne, is there anything else you wanted to add on that?
Actually, there was Governor Polis extended the executive order last night from April 20th to April 30th, so only just 10 days. But it still doesn't affect the full payments that are due on April 30th. People can't make a late payment of anything other than the first half property tax payments, which were due on March 20th. I checked in with the Treasurer's staff, and they have said that they've had a few inquiries on late payment of the first payment, but nobody's really taken them up on it. And full payments seem to be rolling in pretty much as normal.
So, Steve, I just have a question.
Kelly wants to jump in, and let's do Kelly and then Patty.
Thanks, Steve. Two questions. Is the governor the only one who has the opportunity to affect this type of decision with regards to payment deadlines? And how would someone who would ordinarily want to pay in full, could they now try to divide that up in two payments over the year?
I'll answer your first question first. So the governor is the only one that can change what's written in state statute via executive order. Executive orders can only be done for 30 days. So no decisions can be made right now on, say, for instance, late payments for the second payment, which would be in June. So the second part of your question was the breaking up the payments. We don't have authorization to do that in state statute. However, somebody who may have been wanting to do a full payment originally until the crisis happened could now go pay the first payment, which was due on March 20th, without any penalty, and then that would defer the second payment until June 30th. So they could now choose to do it in two payments, whereas previously before they may have decided just to do one. And so that's really the only benefit of the current executive order.
Well, and that additional time might help some people. So thank you.
Yes, exactly. I am getting questions from taxpayers regarding late payment of the second payment. And our response right now is that, we don't have the authority to do that. And the governor's executive orders we wouldn't know until he did one, which could be no more than 30 days in advance of the date.
So, and Mike Kelly,
And I might add that the governor is not ordering us to do that. He's just authorizing the treasurers to do that. So it's a decision that the treasurers have made, and I've been participating in all of the treasurer discussions, and it's kind of like all the treasurers in Colorado felt that they should all do the same. So there was no kind of like difference between different counties. And so that was all treasurers decided that they were going to do this, allow late payments up to April 30th.
so Ann, my question. My question.
Yeah, go ahead, Patty.
My question is more if this continues out into outer dates longer, that then there becomes an issue with the statutory dates required for notification, foreclosures, et cetera, that would extend, I think, into late summer, fall, maybe. So that's another kind of a quagmire if we delay payments, the second payment or all the payments or whatever, then it kind of pushes back the foreclosure dates and notification of late payments. So that comes into play also, doesn't it, statutorily?
Yeah, so the governor is also part of his executive order, has required all new foreclosures not to be filed. So we can't take new foreclosures. That's a public trustee function, and it's separate from the treasurer function of collecting property taxes.
But I'm talking about if people fail to pay their taxes for this year that are due March or June, and they might put them into a foreclosure issue, a notification of late taxes. Those dates might get moved around in the fall if we are delaying payment dates. Does that make any sense?
No, we haven't received any indication that we would change
those dates. Okay. And the other thing too with foreclosures, is it any foreclosure or just because the federal foreclosure issue is only for governmentally funded or loan agencies for government projects?
I think it's all foreclosures.
Is it all foreclosures? Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
That's what I thought too, but somebody told me different. Now I can tell them that I'm right and they're wrong.
And that, that's just in the state of Colorado. It might be different in other states.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, could you go to the next slide, please? Next, we'll look at sales tax, and the funds that rely primarily on sales tax for their revenue stream are the Capital Fund, Road and Bridge Fund, Healthy Rivers and Streams, and the Transit Sales and Use Tax Fund. And then in the general fund, sales tax makes up about 18% of general fund revenues. And this is up.
It hasn't advanced on my Zoom screen. Has the slide advanced for the board on your Zoom screen? Or are you still on revenue projections for 7/2020?
No, we're on number one. We're on number one slide.
Yeah, so it's not advancing. Yeah, it's still not advancing. Sorry, we're just hitting a brief technical glitch here. Just want to make sure. There we go.
Sales tax is our most volatile revenue source, and the graphs that are in this memo were from the 2020 budget presentation. So these show what we were forecasting and budgeting for 2020 and then through 2024. And on this graph, it goes back all the way to 1998. So you see the historical trend over the years with sales tax. And the green line is actual and the blue line is budget. And you see in 2001, after 9/11, that we had a drop in sales tax. And at that point of time, it took 2 years for our sales tax levels to get back up to the prior level. Then in 2009, with the recession, we had a significant drop in sales tax, and it took 5 years for our sales tax to get back up to normal. Next slide, please. And this graph shows the percentage change year to year in sales tax collections. So in 2001, 2002, we had 2 negative years, down 3 and 3.8%. Then in 2009, that was our biggest historical drop ever at 17.4%. We bounced back up percentage-wise, but even though you see those positive percentages, it took 5 years of positive percentages to get back up to the prior level dollar-wise of sales tax. Now, we're very fortunate in the 2020 budget in that we were projecting 2019 sales tax to be up 15%. Instead, it's up 22.4%. We were then budgeting for a 2% decrease off of that projection. Because our actuals came in higher than projected, that means we could have a 7.9% drop in sales tax for the year and still be on budget. So that kind of lessens the impact budget-wise of what we see in the rest of this memo because we were already budgeting for a downturn. In our projections for sales tax, we took a fairly broad range, and with the smallest decrease being 15.6%, the middle ground 19.10%, and then the severest scenario at 25% down. And then we also gave different time frames in which the sales tax would bounce back up to prior levels. So in the first scenario, we're expecting a V shape where sales tax would immediately in 2021 bounce back up to the prior levels in our 5-year plan. The second scenario is more of a U shape where it takes 2 years to go back up to the budgeted levels. And then the third scenario, it takes 3 years to go back up. Next in the memo, a look at fees and service charges. The funds that rely mainly on fees are airport, public safety radios, the solid waste center, fleet, and REMP, and then 17% of general fund revenue. Solid waste center will see probably a decrease in fees this year, but they do have a pretty good fund balance. They should not be in bad shape because of it. The airport, I think John had mentioned previously that we are already seeing some stimulus money coming through that will help to make up for some fees. In the general fund, community development.
You saw my eye lit up.
Yeah, I'm not sure the board is all aware of that, and I just want to make sure I have the right amount.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that.
I don't know if it's confirmed yet.
Yeah. So the indication that we've gotten is that the airport will receive up to $3.5 million from the CARE Act, and so that number has fluctuated a little bit. So we're still waiting for confirmation, but it's a indication, I think, that there is some stimulus dollars from the federal government that are going to flow to different portions of local government.
In the general fund, community development makes up a large part of our fees. Fortunately, we had a very conservative budget in 2020, so community development fees could be down 36% and still make budget. I talked to Cindy Hubin yesterday, and she's touched base with her staff, and at the moment, she's not foreseeing a large drop this year where things stand today.
Yeah, we're still seeing planning submittals and even building permit submittals staying on pace right now. And I think that's in anticipation that the stay-at-home orders and public health orders affecting particularly construction activity will be unwound in time to take advantage of the construction season.
With clerk and recorder fees, we are expecting to see some decrease because these fees fluctuate with real estate and construction trends, also some motor vehicle collections. With treasurer's fees, they are based on a percentage of property tax, and since property tax is stable in 2020, we will not see any decrease in treasurer's fees. So overall, we're not in bad shape at the moment, how it appears today, for fees and service charges for the general fund. And then under intergovernmental revenues, the Road and Bridge Fund, Human Services, and Public Health funds all rely heavily on intergovernmental revenues, and then 9% of general fund revenue. We're not projecting a decrease in grants for the time being, and if anything, we may start to see some stimulus money coming through, we hope, for public health and human services. In the Road and Bridge Fund, the one area of intergovernmental revenue where we do expect to see a decrease is in the highway users tax. We have a budget of $1.2 million, and a part of the highway users tax, the money that the state collects and then redistributes to the county, is based on a motor fuel tax of 22 cents per gallon and also on motor vehicle license and registration fees. So with less people driving, less traffic on the road, we do expect that our share of the highway users tax fees will be down in 2020. Interest income, we are expecting to be down. However, in most funds, it makes up a very small percentage of total revenue, anywhere from 1 to 2%, in some funds even less than that. And then indirect revenues in the general fund are based on the services that the general fund provides to other county funds, and then we charge them for, and it's based on expenditures from the prior year. So we don't see any change in that in 2020. And if you could forward to the next slide, please. So the summary at the end is looking at 5 county funds. We call these the core service funds. We group them together because some of the revenue sources are the same. Some of the funds depend on transfers from the general fund. So we're looking at general fund, capital fund, road and bridge, human services, and public health. Again, the good news is that the fund balances for each of these funds are higher than what we were projecting in our 2020 budget. You see the first column in this chart, what we were projecting ending fund balance to be at the end of 2019 in our budget process, our current estimate, and then what the increase is. So general fund is $3.5 million higher than what we were looking at in our budget process. Overall for the 5 ones, $4.69 million. So we're in a better starting position than where we thought we'd be. This is really important at the moment because that helps to absorb some of the impact of our scenarios that we'll show next. Next slide. In this next slide, you see the 2020 budget in the first column, and these are all of the revenue sources for the 5 core service funds, property tax, sales tax, and so on. And then we have scenarios 1, 2, and 3, going from least to most severe. In the first scenario, it's about a $1.7 million impact. That's down 3.7% overall in revenue. Scenario 2 is down $2.9 million, or a 6.5% drop. And scenario 3 is about $4 million, or a 9% drop in revenue. And the next slide. And so those are the impacts on 2020. When we put those into a 5-year plan and carry that out, especially trying to see what the impact is, how quickly we bounce back on sales tax or other revenues, or if it takes a couple of years to do so, then this next slide shows the impact over the course of a 5-year time frame for each fund. So for all of the core services, in scenario 1, over a 5-year time frame, it would be about a $3.1 million impact. Scenario 2, over $7 million. Scenario 3, almost $13 million.
Okay, Connie, Kelly has a question.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Can you, I noticed on your prior slide for licenses, permits, and fees that there is no change in scenarios 1, 2, and 3, or licenses, permits, and fines. Can you help me understand that, please? Thanks.
Yes, we have, and some of these, it depends on which revenue source we're looking at for each one. I put the decrease in community development revenues in the fees and service charges. So that's where you see ComDev going down and also clerk's fees. And some revenue sources really don't look like there would be a large impact at the moment.
What would fall into the licenses, permits, and fines categories?
Some of that is community development. However, for simplicity's sake, I put all of the community development impact into fees and service charges. And right now, I'm not sure everything that's included in it.
I think she's looking not at the fees and services.
Right, the one below
right
that.
Below.
And Kelly, I don't know. I'd need to go back and look to see everything that's included in that line. I don't have it right offhand.
Okay, thank you.
So Connie, looking at the fund balance at the end of 2019, we had a $4.6 million over what we thought we were going to have. Looking at scenario 3 for 2020, we have a $4 million shortfall. So we actually have the money that we could cover that shortfall, the 9% decrease for 2020. Is that correct?
That's correct. However, what this does not take into consideration is the fact that we have just recently appropriated an additional $850,000 for our emergency response, and there's a chance that we could have some subsequent appropriations. And it also doesn't take into effect how long then it would take for those revenue streams to bounce back up to the budgeted level. So if it were a very quick bounce back and everything came right back the following year, then yes, we could possibly absorb a scenario 3.
But then looking at the scenario 3, 2020 to 2024, with almost a $13 million shortfall, that's projecting that it takes a while. It's going to take 4 years to recover from this, very likely.
And yes, that's projecting actually that sales tax would be down for 3 years, that it would take 3 years to get back up to the prior levels. And so you just get the cumulative effect of revenues being down in the 5-year plan. So it's all magnified when you look at the 5-year out forecast.
And
Steve?
Yeah,
Can I
go
jump
ahead.
in?
Sure.
You know, what's interesting, Connie, looking at some of your initial charts, 9/11 was really the first dip in recent times. And I believe that bounced back quicker. Initially, there was just, I think there was a fear of travel, right? In 2007, 2008, where you had where we went into a real recession, that was again spurred on by the subprime mortgage fiasco, which affected the financial markets. So that was an economic-driven crisis. So here we are in 2020, and it wasn't an economic crisis, it's a health crisis that has led to this problem. And so, again, it goes back to the 9/11 scenario. When people will be willing to start to travel again, will, I think, provide perhaps a quicker turnaround time than a 5-year time frame.
Yeah, it's certainly different from any of the other historical precedents that we can see this century. because we will see sales tax drop in 2020 most likely far greater than any other drop we've seen, just with everything being closed down. In 2001 and in 2009, we didn't have restaurants and most businesses in town shut down. So it's quite a different impact initially, but you're correct that the bounce back could also be much different from these historical precedents.
And, right. And that's why right now we're recommending taking our gas off, our foot off the gas pedal. Sorry, I guess it's not gas off the foot pedal, but our foot off the gas pedal. And so we're looking at vacant positions to hold open. We're looking at some slowdown on capital investments. We'll be, right now, those are the steps that we think are prudent. We structured our budget so we would not have to make precipitous decisions in the event of a downturn, to give us a little bit of time to answer some of the questions, George, that you're asking about what is our real view of how we're going to come out of this. I know in talking to my peers, and we certainly have a financial advisory board member that has been giving us a lot of information that he's receiving through his contacts. The consensus seems to be more of that U-shaped recovery versus the V bounce. So somewhere probably in between scenario 1 and scenario 2 right now. I'd say probably closer to scenario 2, the way that we have that structured. And it's for the reasons, George, that you laid out, that the fundamentals of, we're not working through a lot of fundamentals in terms of finance. It's really going to be paced with when can we reopen economic activity, and there's going to be some pent-up demand presumably there, but it all depends how quickly we can open up and how wide we can open up. I think there's particularly some uncertainty around the resort communities in terms of how quickly travel opens back up, and that's why the U-shaped versus the V-shaped more.
This is Anne. Oh.
Go ahead, Anne.
When do we get our March sales tax numbers?
March sales tax we'll have by the second week in May. So it's always 2 months later.
Yeah. Are you asking what months are typically big months versus smaller months?
No, I just wanted to know exactly when we will know how March shook out.
By mid-May.
Not till mid-May.
It'll be May, and March is a big month. Yeah. But we will have it's not completely shut down until the middle of March, so there will be, the drop would not be as great percentage-wise as April. But April is a fairly small month for us. On another note, the governor has authorized the state to allow deferral of payments of property tax for March for 30 days.
Property or sales tax? Do you mean sales tax, Ann?
Yes, I'm sorry, sales tax. And however, the thought is that not many large companies will necessarily take up on that, because the loss of their vendor fee that they would have to relinquish would be greater than the late payment of interest. So, and then also there's the whole online sales tax piece, which is proven to be fairly significant. That was part of the reason why we had such a high number in 2019. And anecdotally, we're hearing a lot of information about people doing a lot of online shopping right now. So it'll be interesting to see how those numbers impact our sales tax returns.
Yeah, and for the board, you know, in our months that are big months related to tourism, we obviously assumed a much larger decrease. So within these ranges, we have March at a 50 to 60% decrease from the previous year, and it's a big month. We think that's safe given that we had at least the first 2 weeks of March at fairly normal activity. But when you get into April and May, where frankly a lot of the businesses that are shut down now that are affecting our March collections are shut down in April, and you see a big decrease in activity naturally. And as Ann is saying, the stay-at-home order is probably keeping actually more people in the community during the off-season. And I know if my household is any indication, the online ordering is definitely up. So it'll be interesting to see how that buffers. So we're projecting smaller decreases in what are those off-season months, you know, 15 to 20% kind of ranges. That actually may turn out to be conservative. We'll see. But as we get into the summer months, we again are bumping up how much we think sales tax will go down in the 40 to 50% range based on summer activities. We'll probably be unwinding and allowing more activity at that point, but we already know so much has been canceled. But we were already planning for some level of decrease, and we actually had really good January and February's, you know, where we saw 13.5% increases and 10% increases. Those are big months, so they help offset those smaller months a little bit.
Steve, can I ask a question?
Sure, Patty.
When does the do the sales tax, I mean, the online sales tax numbers come through at the same time? Or are they a little delayed?
They're not separated out.
They're
It's
not.
all
So,
together.
so when we get back, and we have March's number, February's.
We don't have February
We don't
yet.
have February yet.
So
February
this
should be
the
coming.
10% we have now
February
is just
was
an
a
estimate.
projection.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So
Yeah.
and then so we'll have March in May.
That's correct.
February in April.
Right.
Okay. Just tracking that.
So, you know, while the percentages, when you take everything as a whole, look smaller, we were fairly aggressive on the sales tax. It is not as aggressive as what you're seeing with some of our municipal partners, but they are not able to collect on the internet sales tax, which actually is a large portion of our off-season economy we are never capturing before. And so that helps buffer a little bit the decreases in those months.
Kelly?
John, can you provide some guidance on what our strategy is for planning to recover $13 million over the next 5 years?
Yeah, so if you, there's probably one, we're not thinking that that's going to be the scenario we end up in. We think we're going to be closer to the middle, Kelly. So that's part of why we did a best and worst and middle case scenario. If we end up in that scenario, we're going to need to make adjustments of probably roughly $2 to $2.5 million a year. And right now, a lot of that is probably going to be in right now our road and bridge fund is probably the most significantly impacted actually as a percentage of overall budget. So we will look to what capital projects and expenditures we might delay or defer without causing larger liabilities in the out years. We will probably continue to look at, as we have vacant positions, which ones we want to hold open and possibly restructure around. If the worst case scenario for us, I think, is some small level of operating reductions. So we would get into that probably in the 2021 planning as we have better kind of intelligence about where those kind of cuts or deferrals would come, Kelly. Right now, I think we would plan more towards the middle scenario as the likely. It's kind of why we did the bookends, was to kind of see what that middle scenario would look like. But if we've got to move to that scenario 3, we'll be making some significant operating reductions also. But we don't think that's where we're going to end up right now.
So we can assure our employees right now that their full-time, that their current status of work is safe and their current benefit levels are safe, and any conversations we would need to have about those type of cuts would happen looking into the future with next year's budget conversation.
Correct. We're not looking at making that precipitous decision. We feel like we've planned for this. We have some room to see how this downturn is going to play out. And I do not plan on recommending to this board making any precipitous decisions around layoffs or staff reductions this year. Now, obviously, if the news gets worse, we'll have to have that discussion as part of our 2021 budget or future budget discussions. But we're anticipating, like I said, more this middle scenario. What it might mean for us as an organization, what it will mean for us as an organization, not all vacancies are going to get filled. Not all newly approved positions are going to get filled. So some of that anticipation of what we are going to be able to do as an organization, we need to slow down on and see what happens. But thank you for that clarification, Kelly. Yeah.
Steve, can I tag on to that real quick?
Yeah, go ahead, Patty.
John, and still in light of that, we've really, staff has done an amazing job for working at home and doing what they can to help the county in other ways. Are there still opportunities for staff who doesn't have the opportunity to work from home, that they can work in other departments, or, because I know that are some employees that we're continuing to pay that, again, don't have the opportunity to work from home. And how are we going to address that?
We've certainly built an internal spreadsheet to identify who those people are, where needs are, what can be matched up. In all cases, we're not able to match people with needs right now, but we've set up that cross-departmental
so we're looking at
information. Absolutely. The other thing I'd make the board aware of is we had started off giving our employees 80 hours right at the beginning of this. As we found throughout this event, we're a little bit ahead of the national curve and state curve. With the passage of the CARE Act, there's another 80 hours required to restart on April 1st. And so we are providing those benefits to our employees who do find themselves in that position, and hopefully that leave will carry through our public health orders and resuming either normal activity or finding other ways for employees to contribute.
Thank you.
So, guys, I am not here guaranteeing that we don't end up in that scenario 3. And I'm not going to tell you we don't end up in scenario 1. I think we need a little bit more time. And I think these numbers, this range, it's very reasonable to expect that we fall somewhere in this range. I think we're expecting in somewhere towards the middle. And we've got some time to ride this out and see where it goes before we start making drastic decisions. Had we not already started planning for a recession and maybe made more aggressive decisions during our 2020 budget, we'd probably be having a different discussion. I know a lot of organizations are finding themselves in that position. So, I want to thank our financial advisory board, our finance staff, for having foresight, and for the board also sharing that foresight, because it's put us in a position where I think we can be strategic in how we approach this. So, thank you. More to come.
Oh, can't wait.
All right, thanks, John. And Connie and Ann for the update on that. So, yeah, more to come, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have, John, do you have any other board open discussion items?
Steve, I could pull up our just latest information here. Give me just a second.
And John, do we want to discuss this draft letter too?
Yeah, and so we have two things, and hopefully you all received an email with a draft letter that's being worked on for the board. I haven't seen that email come through yet.
Yeah, well, it came through, and I got a copy, hard copy, but I think it came through.
I saw it.
Yeah.
And it came from Rich, the one from Rich.
Yeah.
Yes.
Who sent it?
And
invitation to edit?
We need to edit. A lot of it needs to be rewritten. It's a good start, gives us some idea of where we might want to go, but there's a lot of things, the wording, the wordsmithing. So I think maybe we all need to look at it maybe tonight and bring it back tomorrow, because I know we want to get it out.
Yeah, maybe if you guys want to take a look at that and suggest some edits, and we can bring it back during open discussion tomorrow. If you could maybe provide some thoughts on the wording from your perspective by tomorrow morning, and then we can see if Pat has a chance to rework it.
Sometime tomorrow. It might not be in the morning.
And it's the one that starts, dear Pickens County community members near and far.
Correct.
Is that the right one?
Yes.
Okay.
Does that work for everyone?
Yeah, that sounds, instead of trying to do group word processing right now, that would make more sense.
Yeah, my only quick comment is it's way too long.
We'll look forward to your edits.
He muted himself on that one.
Just real quick, more for the public. As of yesterday at 6 o'clock, just to give an update on where we are in the numbers, we have 34 confirmed positive cases in Pickens County. We had one bed at Aspen Valley Hospital utilized for a COVID-19 patient, so that metric has been staying pretty constant. That's good. Valley View was reporting 0 beds being used, so from a valley-wide perspective, that's good. That's compared to 924 patients who are hospitalized in the state. Our symptoms reporter, we've had 285 people participate in the symptoms survey. I just really, for any public that's watching, if you do have any symptoms, headache, cough, fever, stomach, any type of physical health related symptoms, really encourage you to go out and fill out that symptom tracker in the absence of community-wide testing. This is one of the ways we're tracking what could be happening with the spread of COVID. Right now, the onset of symptoms, the date continues to have greatly decreased. The symptoms that are being reported on the symptom tracker since the public health orders were put in place. So that's a good trend. We remain, sadly, we have had 2 deaths in the community attributed to COVID-19, but that has stayed constant for several days now. With that, I guess I'd answer questions.
Steve, I have a question about the survey.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Patty?
Yeah, do you think people are hesitant to complete the survey because they have to put in their name, their address, their sector of employment, that people might be concerned about being, it's kind of a HIPAA kind of a thing, and they might be concerned about being targeted or, their neighbors finding out and being, ostracized, not that they shouldn't be separated from their neighbors right now anyway, but do you think that might be a concern for people who are filling it out? I mean, I just was a thought, having gone through it and looking at all the categories.
Yeah, I guess it could be. I don't know.
The name part was optional.
It's optional.
You
so
didn't
you don't
have to fill out the name part.
I thought it had a little red
Change.
star by it, but maybe not.
Just pop out there and see if I can look at it.
And the other thing is, when I pull up the county website, and maybe I'll have Andrew help me with this, all I get is a Pitkin County COVID alert on closures. It's very difficult to find the tracking to. I'll have Andrew look at it. And also, I was told the census would pop up, and wherever I'm pulling up, PitkinCounty.com is not pulling up that stuff.
Yeah, could you pull that up and just?
See, I don't get that COVID information bar on mine. I'll pull it up so Andrew can see it later.
So here we got the home page. You can go to the COVID-19 page. And if we scroll down under surveys here, we can see links to the form both in English and in Spanish.
Yeah, I found that, but it doesn't pull up when I pull up the Pitkin County site. That's all I get. I'll show you later and you can help me through it.
And then I do want to point out on the dashboard the de-identified nature of that data. So here's where the public can go to view these symptoms, what people are
Right.
And so the areas we've broken it down into are Aspen, other Pitkin County, and Snowmass.
Right, but does the survey itself mandate that you put in your name and who you work for? Well, not who you work for, but the sector you work in?
No.
Name and address and things like that are optional.
They are optional.
And what industry do you work is not
Optional?
asterisk? Yeah.
Okay, because when I pulled
Which
it
of
up,
the
I
following?
thought it looked like it was mandated.
Yeah.
Okay, but I'll have Andrew look at why this isn't pulling up correctly on mine, and I'll have him look at it. He's been my tech guy today, so he's been the best.
Yeah. So no, I think those were optional.
Okay,
Patty, from what
perfect.
I'm
Thank you for clarifying that.
Mhm.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, Kelly, and then George.
Thank you. So I have something un-COVID related, but I'll do my COVID related questions, I guess, first. So, John, could you give us can you give us a preview as to Thursday's community meeting? And then also, I feel like we need to check in about testing every time we talk because it changes and it continues to be the biggest question up there in the public.
Yeah, so actually I have not been part of we're kind of evergreening these Thursday, community updates. And I have not been part of the discussion yet, Kelly, with the IMT. So I will try and find that out and shoot you guys a topic and what they're planning on doing with that. I do know, I think the intention is to, again, get some elected representation on those. So
Good. I was
yeah.
going to request that.
Yeah, so let me find out what the topic du jour is. On testing, we continue to have the medical advisory committee that we have been working with through the hospital, analyzing different tests. We also have brought on former CDC employee who is helping us do some strategizing around community-based testing. I know they spent almost a full day talking about testing strategy and what tests would best fit our community. We do still have we are still waiting to hear back from the antibody test, which is the finger prick, the blood drop test that we've talked about previously. We have not had a confirmed delivery date on that test, but we have been in touch with that company every day. It is, as we're learning more about the tests that have been fast-tracked through the FDA process, they haven't always gone through, well, they haven't gone through all the vetting that the tests would typically go through in a full FDA approval. And so more and more information is coming out about the specificity of those tests and the accuracy of those tests, the false positive and negative. And one of the challenges that we're looking at right now with the antibody test is it specific to COVID-19 or is it also picking up other coronaviruses, which could be the common cold, and what their false negative rates are. So we're learning more every day. We are still waiting to get confirmation on delivery of an order, and then our testing methodology will be designed around what we're trying to achieve with community-based testing and what we've learned about the pros and cons and specificity of the tests that we receive. So I know everyone is passionate about getting testing, and we are working on it every day to expand that.
So we're seeing more private providers in the Valley offering testing. Do we have some request of them to share what they learn or the number of tests that they're running? Because I know that data point can get missed.
Yeah, so I know we have been in touch with those providers. I do not know what the outcome of that discussion is yet, Kelly, but we certainly have been in touch with the providers. In some cases, we've learned there's actually a very limited number of those tests available. And if they have gone through the FDA approval process or have been fast-tracked, I believe that information on positives does need to be shared with CDPHE, and then it gets shared back with us locally.
Mm-hmm.
We'll double-check that.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. George?
Yeah, I mean, if there's any silk lining in the sow's ears, I would say that 34 confirmed cases to date in Pickens County. I think last week we were at about 28, so we're nowhere even close to seeing doubling of our cases. And I think that's a credit to our public health orders that we were not only ahead of the state, but ahead of other counties. And even though the stay-at-home order is difficult, we're seeing that we're not getting a huge surge. Our neighbor in Eagle County has over 350 confirmed cases. So the stay-at-home order is working, and I think we're hopefully we'll get out of this sooner than others.
Thanks, George. And I'd just like to note that the key metric for us to be watching over the next 7 to 10 days are those hospital beds. We're really watching those. That's what we're really managing to. It's been good news that those have remained flat. I think we're all anxious to get broader based testing in our community to know what those not only infection rates are, but potentially what kind of immunity we've achieved as a community. So more to come on that in the future. But we'll be watching those hospital bed metrics very closely over the next 7 to 10 days.
Kelly?
Thanks. I just want to make sure everyone may have seen, or if not, I'll make sure I forward correspondence that's come from CCI and CCAT that went up to our federal delegation and the White House, requesting that any future response funding be directly targeted to local jurisdictions, rural communities, et cetera, because there's no guarantee that the current monies that have been appropriated through the first 3 bills will come to us. That decision, it looks like, may reside with the state, how those funds will be distributed in Colorado. And so there's a request to POLIS to make sure that money comes to us, and then a request to federal delegation that any future money specifically calls out rural communities and small counties to get some of that funding directly. So if you haven't seen that, happy to share. But I just wanted to point that out. And then my other open discussion item to report out on is, in case you also haven't seen, that the Supreme Court did decide that for a public health emergency, the state legislature could adjourn, and that the 120 days did not need to run consecutively. So it is possible the state is under a deadline to pass the budget and the School Financing Act by June 30th. It is possible that they will convene later this year to take up legislative action on the bills that had been moving through. There's 56 days remaining.
So I've got one item that's related to the virus. It's a letter we got from Lindsay LaFaro on April 3rd. I just noticed that she spelled your name wrong, John. You maybe didn't get this. What it refers to is asking for messaging to the community regarding evictions. And the letter, there's attached a letter from Mountain Voices Project that represent over 21,000 community members. And there's a lot of fear. A lot of them, I think, are the lower income and Latino communities in our valleys, and there's a tremendous amount of fear about evictions because they can't pay their rent. And there was a ruling by Judge Boyd that postponed hearings on evictions until June. Writs of restitution can still be granted, which I don't understand what that means. Anyhow, Lindsay had asked that, or Mountain Voices Project urges us, our local elected officials, to issue a clear and concise statement on this matter. We ask you to make your policy of not enforcing evictions at this time formally known to the community, both by a press release and on your website in English and Spanish, to maximize clarity, minimize confusion, and address the fear in our community. So that was her request, and I think she mentioned to me that she had talked to you, Kelly, about this. But I think it's a valid request for us to respond to. I would need to refer to John Ely or somebody to give us more information about the legality of the evictions. Kelly? Yeah,
thanks. I'll just offer, I had just reached out to ask for clarification on their position as far as evictions that might extend for health and safety reasons or law enforcement reasons. And she had gotten back to clarify that they're really focused on financial forbearance. So people who have been economically impacted, you know, that's the fear in the communities that you know they're representing in this request. And so that was how she framed what she would like our position of support to be.
Yeah, and Lindsay also,
on my list of things
she's one of the temporary workers helping Nan contacting people about the economic assistance. So she's working for the county right now, actually.
Isn't there a state position on evictions?
Yeah, I think that's what we'd probably be pushing out. I think she's referring to some of the court orders and such that provides relief, but that information isn't necessarily reaching it to reaching all the communities who may be impacted.
So we would just need to review what the state order is and try and put it into some kind of statement coming from us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we can probably run that through our JIC to get a one-pager.
And then with legal
message
counsel
out.
review. Bilingual.
So that's, put that out there. I think we should follow up on it, and maybe first step would be to get opinion from John Ely on it.
Steve, can you forward?
And I just forwarded John in case you hadn't gotten it before.
Yeah, I don't think I don't remember seeing that. There's probably an H in the John is my guess.
That's right.
Oh yeah, just got
maybe
it.
we could talk about that more in open discussion at tomorrow's meeting too, or get a follow-up on if we can find out anything in the meantime. So, does anyone else have any other open discussion items?
Not I.
Okay, I think we can say this meeting has come to a close, and we will see you all tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow we need to find, wait, Steve, we need to find out how many people are coming to the office because we have a limit of 5 people.
I was just going to ask that because if I need to run the meeting from home, I can do that. But like if I were in there, I mean, if we're limiting it to 5 people in the room at a time, if we had 2 commissioners and John, that only leaves room for 2 other people. And then if Andrew's one of them.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be here tomorrow.
Steve, there's very little I actually need to be in the room for tomorrow, so I could be around, but I could zoom in either from the office or what have you to accommodate the board. It may be more important that John Ely we really only have 1 land use item, as I recall, that isn't continued. But we also have the IGA and such coming forward. So Patty, you're planning on being here. Is anyone else? Steve, are you thinking about being here?
Well, I was thinking to be there to be chair, you know, for the regular meeting when we'll be having public comment period and different things. I think I don't know what the public is seeing on the grassroots TV screen. Like if they're seeing Patty like she is, Patty, you're tiny on our screen, but maybe on the
tiny.
grassroots.
I don't think that's how it appears on grassroots. And Steve, I did want to jump in here and just, I forgot to have Charlotte add this to the agenda, but I think before and every time you go to conduct public comment, remind people who are watching on their computers or on TV to mute their computer or TV once they've called in. It is imperative they mute their TV and their or their computer if they're watching grassroots once they call in. Otherwise, it can get really confusing and clunky quickly.
Okay, good advice.
So I will be here tomorrow. And Steve, if you would like to join me center stage, that would be nice. Or Kelly, I thought you might want to come in.
You're probably known.
Through Friday.
Okay.
You know, my last time I was in there was on March 11th, the regular meeting on that Wednesday. That's the last time I was in there.
Do you remember how to get here? We can send you directions.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure. I was thinking of driving my car somewhere and then riding my bicycle the rest of the way, so I don't have to get on the RAPTA bus.
Well,
Be safe.
yeah. You can, well, yeah, but you park in town, but only for 4 hours, or they ticket you.
Okay. Yeah, if we have too many people, I'll go up to the office. That's fine.
Thank you.
All right, so see everybody tomorrow.
Thanks, everyone.
Oh, let me show you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
I don't know, because mine comes up and it looks great, Patty. I think you're a problem with your iPad. I'm just telling you.